A young man's eyes shot wide in sheer panic and disbelief. A single, frantic thought consumed him. What the hell is going on? This sudden disorientation struck him at the very moment he believed his cursed high school life was finally over, just as he was walking away from his graduation ceremony. But instead of freedom, he found himself inexplicably in the middle of an entrance ceremony. Worse, the entire scene felt disturbingly familiar. He was on a stage, facing a crowd of new students. A large banner confirmed his location: Cherry Blossom Academy entrance ceremony. He could only wonder what this absurd scene before his eyes was. The reason for the unnerving familiarity then clicked into place. No matter how he looked at it, this was the opening scene of a super popular VR game he had been planning to play. He had even studied the strategy guide he'd bought beforehand, though he hadn't yet started the part-time job he'd lined up to pay for the game itself. As this impossible realization settled in, a man's booming voice welcomed the students to the academy, praising the youngsters who would risk their lives in service to their country. The boy could only stare blankly. The man's speech triggered a memory from the game's lore. He recalled that dungeons, gateways to other worlds, had suddenly appeared around the year 1930. The speaker continued, explaining that their ancestors had built this very military academy, Cherry Blossom Academy, right on top of one of those dungeons. He concluded the history lesson by noting that since the Imperial Army withdrew from the academy, it had been repurposed into a school for explorers instead. The young man listens, a grim understanding dawning on his face. He recognizes all of this is the fundamental setting of the game. The headmaster's speech continues to echo, explaining how the magic stones and powerful items produced by monsters found in dungeons have completely altered the balance of power between nations. Because of this, a fierce global competition for these dungeon resources has erupted, turning this very academy into a brutal battlefield for influence and power. Those who brave the dungeons and obtain these items are known as explorers. They are treated with great respect by the country, and the power they gain from defeating monsters can be quantified and displayed as a personal level. As a result, high-level explorers are showered with all the riches and fame they could possibly desire, celebrated as heroes by adoring crowds. This is the idealized image of success, a confident, celebrated warrior basking in the glory of their achievements. But the headmaster's voice cuts through the fantasy, his tone turning deadly serious. He insists that when the school asks its students to risk their lives for the country, it is no exaggeration. The protagonist listens, the gravity of the words sinking in. He already knew this to be true. The guidebook he'd bought for the game made it perfectly clear. It is common knowledge that people die fighting monsters. His grim thoughts are interrupted as a figure walks past him. He turns, a flicker of recognition in his eyes, as he realizes who she is. She walks with a gentle, confident smile, seemingly unaware of his gaze. He watches her, stunned by her presence here in this world. Her name came to him in a flash of recognition: Shinguji Ayano. She was one of the love interests from the game. This academy, he recalled, organized its classes based on ability. Ranks range from D to A, with C being the standard for a regular class. Students in the higher echelons, like those in Class 1A, had already ventured into dungeons, accumulating experience and raising their levels. His own situation, however, was the worst possible. From the moment he enrolled, he was placed in Class D. To make matters worse, the seating order was determined by rank, and his desk was at the very back of the room. As he sat stewing in his misfortune, a book was suddenly slid onto his desk. He looked down, startled, at the cover. A thorough introduction to the strongest. He recognized it instantly. This was a strategy guide he had purchased. A wave of disbelief washed over him. His concentration was shattered by a sharp voice calling his name. "Hey, Takasuji, can't you hear me?" He snapped to attention, confirming he was present. A nearby student with slick-back hair sneered, remarking on what a weirdo he was for staring at a blank book. This student is Takasuji Takashi, an unlucky member of Class 1D with the lowest grade. According to the story's progression, he is fated to challenge the protagonist, lose the duel, and be forced to leave the academy. Rumors of his subsequent death would later circulate. With extremely low stats, he poses no real threat and is ultimately considered a sympathetic character. The realization struck him with the force of a physical blow. He wasn't the hero. He was the worst character in the school, fated to be written out of the story almost immediately. He was going to fight the protagonist and die, and his only legacy would be the label sympathetic. A cold dread filled him as he made a new vow. He would stay as far away from the protagonist as possible. He clutched the book, a sudden realization dawning on him. This strategy guide could be his one chance to change his doomed fate. With it, he could become the strongest in this world, navigating the detailed routes to win over the beautiful love interest that filled the academy. As he pondered this, the teacher at the front of the class interrupted his thoughts, holding up a small, armored device. He announced that each student would now be given one. The devices were distributed, and a murmur of excitement spread through the room as students began activating them. One group gathered around a desk, exclaiming in awe at the amazing stats displayed on their classmate's screen. His attention, however, was drawn to another student, one with reddish hair who was already surrounded by admirers, including Shinguji Ayano. A cold certainty washed over him. This had to be the game's protagonist. With a sense of dread, he tapped his own device on. The screen lit up, displaying his name, Takasuji Takasi. Below were his stats: Level 1, Apprentice. His health and magic points were pitifully low, and his attributes in strength, magic, agility, endurance, and were all single digits or barely above. He stared at the word, confused. Apprentice? What did that even mean? As soon as he saw the values, he realized he could now recall them in his mind at will. The information was permanently accessible, but he had no idea how any of it actually worked. His internal monologue was shattered by a gruff voice shouting, "Hey, bastard!" He understood then that skills, equipment, and even class changes could all be managed through thought alone. He turned to find a large, muscular student with a mohawk looming over his desk, a menacing smirk on his face. The bully glanced down at his device. "Some miracle you got admitted with these stats? Huh." He sneered as Takasuji began to sweat, frozen in place. He flinches as the bully slams a hand on his desk, holding up the device. The boy mocks him, asking if he's cursed, declaring he's never seen a stat with a single digit before. The bully continues to express his disbelief at the terrible numbers. A view of his own status reveals his name, Furuta Masao, an apprentice with stats like Strength 35 and Agility 31. Takasuji realizes with a jolt that these are just normal stats for someone who isn't the hero. Turning to the rest of the class, Furuta bellows for everyone to look at the incredible stats, laughing maniacally as he puts Takasuji's weakness on display for all to see. He can only seethe in silence, his face twisted in humiliation and rage. The anger drains away, replaced by crushing defeat. He stares at the cover of his strategy guide, wondering what he was thinking. He wasn't the strongest, he was just nothing. As he tries to read, the cruel words of his classmates drift over, soon to be dead trash. He flips through the book, his eyes scanning the pages without focus, until a single phrase catches his attention. The fastest? The page header promises a secret. The absolute best, undeniably fastest way to beat the game. It even boasts that one can easily beat the final boss this way. A slow, unsettling grin spreads across his face, his eyes wide with a crazed revelation. He understands now. With this, he could become the strongest. In the midst of his triumphant thought, a hand places his device back on his desk. He looks up, startled from his reverie. He looked up to see who had spoken. Standing before him was a girl with long, dark hair flowing down her back, her expression serious. She held out his device, asking plainly, "This was yours, right?" His eyes widened in stunned recognition. As he stared at the girl holding his device, a single, stammered thought echoed in his mind. He knew who she was. A sudden realization dawns on the young man. The girl before him is Hanagasaki Reika, the most popular character from the game's love interest poll, a face he recognizes from a television advertisement. He can only sweat and stammer a faint confirmation, overwhelmed by her presence. Her gaze then drops, landing directly on the device in his hand, her expression unreadable. The horrifying thought that she saw his stats fills him with panic. He clutches his head, crying out internally at the sheer embarrassment of it all. Her voice cuts through his turmoil. She tells him that the device is important and warns him not to lose it. With that, she turns and walks away, leaving him sitting at his desk, stunned and clutching the device. He watches her go, her name echoing in his mind. Hanagasaki Reika is, after all, a figure of renown. The young lady of the Hanagasaki conglomerate. She is known as Hanasama or Reika-sama. Her starting equipment is excellent, and she is destined to become a magic specialist. Though considered an unapproachable ice queen, she is a must-have for any magic party. Standing on a walkway later, he reflects on this. She's so popular that even he, someone who hasn't played the game, knows of her. The mere fact of being in the same class feels momentous. He turns to look out from the railing, his thoughts turning from the girl to the game itself, a new weight to his considerations. He stared at the information before him, the grim reality of this new world sinking in. The game featured permadeath, a brutal rule that meant even the protagonist's own party could be wiped out permanently, let alone himself. Clenching his jaw, he made a decision. He would use this power. His eyes burned with a new fire, his voice filled with conviction as he declared his singular goal, to become strong, no matter what it took. This resolve led him to a specific destination. He stood before a doorway, a simple, taped-up sign announcing his arrival at the Champion Crest Hall. He stepped inside to find a room resembling an infirmary, lined with beds separated by privacy curtains. In one corner, a woman was tattooing another student's back, while a young man with dark hair and glasses observed his entrance from a nearby bed. The needle buzzed, meticulously etching a complex, flame-like pattern onto the student's skin. His attention was then captured by the young man with the glasses, who leaned forward with a look of detached curiosity. The artist finally spoke, his voice cool as he asked where the tattoo should be placed. Visibly nervous, the protagonist clasped his hands together and stammered a request for the normal place. At the artist's direction, he removed his shirt and lay face down on the bed. The artist stood over him, tool in hand, ready to begin. Before starting, the artist sneered, informing him that he should feel honored. He explained that he already had a contract with a high-ranking guild, and that tattooing a piece of trash like him was beneath him. The words, "a champion crest," echoed, filling the protagonist with a fresh wave of anxiety. This system of champion crests is, in essence, a network of magic marks. By receiving one of these tattoos, an individual gains the ability to learn and utilize special spells, unlocking the potential for magic. He examines his new champion crest in the mirror, a jagged lightning bolt, identical to the one worn by the game's hero. He wonders if it was truly alright to have that particular artist give him the tattoo, but he resolves to trust the process. The strategy guide didn't specify who should apply it, so he convinces himself that as long as the lightning crest, everything should be fine. Meanwhile, back in the classroom, an excited buzz fills the air. Hanagasaki Reika is surrounded by her classmates, who gaze in awe at a brilliant light emanating from the crest on her chest. Across the room, other students share in the anticipation. Shinguji Ayano clasps her hands with a determined smile, while the game's protagonist and his friend review their own plans from a book. The general excitement is broken when Furuta Masao approaches Takasuji. He announces that it's finally time for the after-class dungeon dive, then sneers, telling Takasuji not to expect anyone to team up with him. Ignoring the taunt, he opens his strategy guide, Never Quest, and declares his intention to follow its instructions. From behind, Furuta watches him with a contemptuous smirk. His guide leads him away from the bustling classroom and down a completely deserted school hallway. He reaches a locker room, peering around the corner to confirm his solitude. It is empty. Following the guide's directions, he approaches a specific locker. The sound of the metal door opening echoes with a sharp clack. Inside, lying on the floor of the otherwise empty locker, is a single 50-yen bill. He picks it up, astonished. He grapples with the morality of taking it, acknowledging that even in an RPG world, stealing feels wrong. But with no other choice, he must follow the guide. A realization then dawns on him. While 50 yen isn't much in this world, its value is multiplied 100-fold. He carefully picked up the 50-yen bill, a sly grin on his face, before kneeling by a small fountain to wash his hands, his expression shifting to one of wide-eyed surprise. With his newfound money, scrolls, and potions gathered, he declared that he had acquired quite a lot and was now ready to get going. Gripping a simple wooden staff, his expression hardened with resolve as he announced his destination, the dungeon. His path led him to a cordoned-off area on the school grounds, where a set of stairs descended into a square opening in the earth. At the bottom of the stone steps stood the entrance proper, a massive, reinforced wooden door set into the subterranean walls. Before entering, he consulted his Never Quest strategy guide. The first day's instructions were bizarre. He was to hit himself with as many bolt spells as he could. The guide explained this was to raise a hidden magic resistance stat, a crucial step for a swordsman-type class that would be impossible after leveling up. It warned that skipping this unavoidable grind could result in being defeated in a single hit at lower levels. The guide illustrated the spell granted by his champion Crest, Bolt, a lightning-type magic skill. He stepped through the doors into the dungeon's first chamber. The air was still, and he observed that there were no enemies near the entrance. Seizing the opportunity, he raised his hand, energy crackling around his fingertips as he shouted the incantation. Bolt. A torrent of lightning erupted from his palm, not towards himself as instructed, but slamming violently into the stone wall beside him. He stares at the scorched stone wall, sweat trickling down his temple. The magic left a distinct, blackened mark on the dungeon bricks. A wave of relief washes over him, his eyes wide with excitement. He shouts aloud, confirming that his unorthodox experiment worked. He resolves to begin grinding his secret stat immediately. Slowly, he raises a hand to his own chest and unleashes the spell, crying out its name, Bolt. A violent surge of electricity engulfs his body as he screams in agony. The raw power of the spell throws him to the ground. His body convulses on the stone floor, smoke rising from his uniform as his face contorts in pain. He lies sprawled on the floor, gasping for breath, the aftershocks of the spell leaving him momentarily stunned. As feeling returns, the terrifying reality of his ordeal floods his mind. He realizes with a jolt of fear that his heart nearly stopped. He had come dangerously close to death. He recalls the information from his guidebook. It clearly states that the Bolt spell inflicts a paralysis condition on its target. The knowledge offers no comfort for the excruciating pain. Kneeling in the empty corridor, he clutches his stomach and wonders if he truly has to endure such agony. But his resolve hardens. Steeling himself, he decides to press on. He sits up, takes a breath, and once again shouts the spell's name, unleashing another bolt of lightning upon himself. He grits his teeth, a guttural cry escaping his lips as the electricity once again ravages his body. His flesh burned and smoke from the repeated electrical shocks. The pain was still intense, but he noted it was nowhere near as agonizing as the first time, a clear sign that his resistance was building. After enduring the torment for about 5 minutes, he recovered completely, the burn vanishing without a trace. He surmised this rapid healing must be the effect of an increased recovery buff provided by the surrounding ether. Steeling himself, he unleashed the spell upon his own body once more, convulsing as electricity coursed through him. He collapsed to the ground, the agony threatening to overwhelm his mind. He knew that if he continued this way, he might truly go mad. Realizing he needed another solution, he consulted the strategy guide. It revealed the existence of defensive items known as rings, which could reduce the amount of damage taken. Following this new lead, he made his way to the Academy's tool storage facility and approached the service counter. The attendant handed him a small, sealed package, informing him that the item within did not need to be returned. He returned to the stone corridors and opened the package, revealing a simple band. He recognized it as a slime ring. As he continued on his way, he passed by another group of students. It was the game's protagonist and his party, including Shinguji Ayano and Hanagasaki Reika, all gathered around a book. From a distance, another student watched them pass. Her eyes narrowed as she noted the unlikely combination of people, the protagonist, Hanagasaki, and Shinguji, all together. As the group passes, Takasuji Takashi is taken aback, his face showing clear surprise. His gaze meets that of Hanagasaki Reika, who looks back at him with a serene, unreadable expression. He quickly turns away, his back to them, wondering if their eyes truly met. He worries about how he must appear to the popular students as he watches them walk away down the stone path. Deciding it's best not to draw attention, he kneels to pick up his belongings from the ground. He reminds himself that he is, after all, in quite a blessed situation. A wave of determination washes over him. Clutching a strategy guide for the game Never Quest, he clenches his fist, affirming to himself that everything is all right. Within a vast, stone-walled courtyard, Takasuji Takashi stands alone, focusing his energy. He unleashes a spell, a bolt of power, as part of a grueling training regimen. The effort leaves him sweating, but a look of grim determination crosses his face. He feels a surge of confidence, realizing his power is now far greater than before. An aura of crackling energy envelopes him as he declares to himself that he can now succeed. His method was a test of endurance. While carefully monitoring his own health, he repeatedly cast the bolt spell directly onto his own leg, pushing his body to its limits. For 2 grueling hours, he subjected himself to this process, his leg constantly wreathed in arcs of raw energy. The training began to show results. He recalled that at first, he was never able to trigger a perfect dodge. But now, something was different. His focus is suddenly broken by a small disturbance on the stone floor before him. From a shimmering puddle, a gelatinous creature materializes, a slime monster. It forms fully, its simple, angry face glaring at Takasuji, who stands ready for a confrontation. Without warning, the creature launches itself through the air, directly at him. Takasuji's eyes widen in shock as he recognizes the monster for what it is. He throws himself aside, just in time, the slime splattering on the ground where he just stood. Gasping for breath, a cold dread washes over him as he realizes his health is critical. He has only 1 hit point left. With trembling hands, he quickly retrieves a small vial from his pocket. He pops the cork and immediately drinks the contents. The effect is instantaneous. A wave of energy washes over him, signaling a complete recovery. He remembers Master Tony's warning that he might die without a potion. The close call leaves him shaken but thankful for the advice. Now fully restored and ready to face the slime, he continued his training, mindlessly working to raise his magic resistance. While dodging the occasional slime that came to attack him, he cast his spell once more. Later that night, he returned to the student dorms. The following day, he walked into his classroom to find his classmates already gathered, their attention fixed on a large screen at the front of the room. On the screen, a formidable warrior with a high ponytail and ornate armor stared down an unseen foe, her massive sword and shield held at the ready. She and her guildmates then launched into a ferocious, coordinated assault against a monstrous, fanged beast. Back in the classroom, the students watched in awe. One recognized the group as Ichu and Kyuko's amazing guild. Another student identified her as being from the night class, marveling at how she shrugged off attacks as if they were nothing. He watched, completely captivated by the display of power. She was incredible. That night, lying in his dorm room bed, he couldn't stop replaying the battle in his mind. He wondered if he could ever end up being someone as strong as that. His thoughts turned inward, a sense of unease creeping over him. He felt as though other people were avoiding him, and suspected it was because his stats were so low. A dreadful realization began to dawn on him, his face breaking out in a cold sweat. He worried that at this rate, he could be expelled for being too weak. He stands with his classmates before the entrance to a dungeon, a stone structure built into the school grounds. A teacher stands before them, ready to begin the day's lesson. The teacher announces that today's lesson is the long-awaited dungeon dive. Takasuji, looking slightly flustered, confirms that he's fully prepared, thanks to the strategy guide he studied. Despite his outward confidence, a seed of doubt sprouts in his mind. He clutches the guide, praying that nothing unexpected happens, nothing that wasn't in the game. Something is bothering him. The strategy guide was dated 1 day off from the entrance ceremony. His worries are cut short as the teacher gives the class their objective. He cheerfully instructs them to go to the 2nd floor and come back, sending the students down the stone steps into the dungeon's maw. As he walks with the group, he reaffirms his own plan. The strategy guide says he can make it back safely without even fighting, as long as he sticks close to the other students. He glances around, acutely aware of the power gap. According to the information tablet from that morning, almost all students are at least level 3. The highest levels belong to the protagonist party, including Shinguji Ayano at level 5 and Hanagasaki Reika at level 6. His observation is violently interrupted. A large hand grabs him by the collar, and he finds himself face-to-face with Furuta Misao again. The bully roars in disbelief, shouting that Takasuji can't possibly still be level 1. The bully sneers, mocking him for not being able to defeat a single slime. Takasuji stammers that he just hasn't fought yet. Nearby, the game's protagonist observes the confrontation. The protagonist then steps forward, addressing Takasuji directly. He offers to help him level up. Stunned by the unexpected offer, Takasuji can only stare. He recognizes the boy as Ichiju Kazuma, the game's protagonist, while Furuta looks on with a surprised expression. He looks up at Ichiju Kazuma, the very protagonist of the game world. Takasuji knows the man has everything: good looks, high stats, and even special magic. Compared to that, he feels like nothing. He stammers a refusal, and no thanks. But Kazuma simply smiles, understanding. He tells Takasuji to let him know if he ever needs help. As Kazuma's group begins to walk away, the curly-haired girl beside him adds that it's in everyone's best interest to strengthen the weakest members for the upcoming class competition exam. The bully, Furuta, lingers for a moment, turning back to Takasuji. He advises him that he'd better take them up on their offer, reminding him that it's Kazuma's party. He then turns and heads for the dungeon entrance, telling Takasuji to call if he needs them. His uncharacteristic kindness only irritates Takasuji, who silently fumes that Furuta shouldn't act so nice just because the protagonist is present. He decides he doesn't need their concern and will stick to his own plan. Since he can't raise his level yet, all he can do is follow the strategy guide. With that, he turns and walks away. With his mind made up, he sprints through the school's corridors and out into the open grounds, a determined look on his face. He pumps a fist, shouting that with school out, it's time to grind his hidden skills. His training ground is a stone dungeon. Peeking from behind a pillar, he spots a lone figure in the distance and whispers the name of a spell, Bolt. The spell erupts in a flash of lightning, striking the distant figure. To Takasuji's delight, it deals no damage. He celebrates another perfect dodge. As a large slime monster prepares to attack, Takasuji notes with satisfaction that his skill is rising. He fails to notice a smaller, dark slime creeping up on him from the side. The creature launches a projectile. Takasuji yelps in surprise as he dodges, the glob splattering against the wall behind him. A grin spreads across his face as he realizes he's managed to raise his magical dodge skill in the process. His training was abruptly interrupted. As a slime monster lunged, a sudden, unseen force struck it, causing the creature to burst and dissolve into a harmless puddle. He whirled around, startled and annoyed, demanding to know who had interfered. The source of the intervention was Hanagasaki Reika, now clad in ornate robes and wielding a large, intricate staff. He stared in shock, recognizing her immediately. With a look of concern, she asked if he was all right. He quickly tried to compose himself, a nervous sweat breaking out on his face. Internally, he fretted over the strange rumors that might start, that he, a supposed villain, needed saving from a simple slime. Pushing the thought aside, he managed a strained smile and thanked her. Standing opposite him in the wide, stone-paved corridor, she formally offered her assistance, asking if he needed any help. Her offer sent his mind racing. He recoiled at the thought, reminding himself that he absolutely must not attract attention. The people he needed to avoid most were the main cast of this world's story. Interfering with the protagonist could lead to ruin. Based on this conviction, he gave a curt reply, stating that he did not need help. He then turned away slightly and bluntly asked what she wanted. She explained that she had only come to investigate after hearing a voice and was simply relieved to see that he was safe. He dismissed her concern, telling her to leave him alone if that was all. With that, he turned his back completely and began to walk away down the corridor, leaving her watching him go. But she was not finished. She called out after him, asking if he had managed to level up yet. A bead of sweat formed on his temple as he reluctantly admitted that he had not. She pressed her offer of assistance, suggesting that if he was having a hard time, she could help him defeat a monster to level up. He bristled, insisting he was fine and could easily handle it himself. Internally, however, he realized his behavior was only making him seem stubborn and unsociable, and he resolved to end the conversation as quickly as possible. He watched as Hanagasaki Reika finally conceded to his repeated refusals. "That's fine then," she said quietly, turning away. "I see." As she retreated down the stone corridor, he couldn't help but wonder what she was doing down here all alone. Shaking off the encounter, he refocused on his training. The strategy guide he was following advocated for a purely offensive fighting style. He was to make no attempt to dodge attacks, instead taking the full brunt of the damage. After each blow, he would simply use potions to recover fully and continue the assault. He also recalled Master Tony's advice. All his money should be spent on potions and weapons, as armor was not only heavy, but offered no resistance to magical attacks. He considered this aggressive strategy with a grimace. He was, naturally, a bit reluctant to get hurt so much. Although he knew the stakes were real. This wasn't just a game where a blow to the stomach might make him puke or a strike to the head could lead to a concussion. Worst of all, here, a game over meant actual, irreversible death. The thought spurred him into action. He needed to buy some equipment, and so, with his mind made up, he headed for the school store. Inside a brightly lit shop, racks of clothing and shelves lined with masks and helmets offer a wide array of adventuring gear. A prominent mannequin displays an elaborate, high-collared coat over a formal vest. The selection is vast, featuring everything from stylish high-heeled boots and practical trousers to ornate shirts and peculiar accessories, catering to any number of combat or aesthetic preferences. Wandering through the aisles, Takasuji Takashi expresses his amazement at the sheer volume and variety of the equipment available for purchase. His eyes then lock onto a complete set displayed on a mannequin. A sleek black jacket, light-colored cargo pants, reinforced gloves, and sturdy combat boots. He is immediately captivated by the ensemble. He leans in, observing that the gear appears to have high defense and fire resistance. A look of intense determination crosses his face as he realizes he must have the entire set. After the purchase, he walks through a school hallway, sighing at the fact that he is now completely broke. Still, he reasons it was a necessary expense for better gear and proudly shows off his new outfit. Now dressed in his new attire, he stands on a paved training ground, bracing himself as a powerful, unseen force rushes toward him with incredible speed. The attack dissipates around him, leaving him completely unharmed. A faint aura flares up as he grins, surprised but pleased that his training paid off. The skill is complete. Later, while studying, he reflects on his progress. After more than 15 hours of dedicated grinding, he was finally mastering his complete evasion skill. He reads that once the skill reaches 100, it will grant 100% magic resistance, and every additional point will reduce incoming damage by another 1%. His training complete for now, he returns to the mundane reality of school life, sitting in class amongst his peers as the teacher lectures at the front of the room. His return to the classroom is immediately met with confrontation. The teacher, sweating with disbelief, points at him and demands to know what's going on, exclaiming that Takasuji is still only level 1. Leaning over the young man's desk, the teacher insists he must reach level 3 as soon as possible, warning that he's in danger and that students can even die during class. Takasuji, annoyed, dismisses the concern, stating it's none of the teacher's business. The teacher counters forcefully, explaining that if a student below level 5 dies, it becomes the school's responsibility, and he cannot let that happen. Deciding on a course of action, he scans the room to find the student with the highest level to act as a helper. His search ends as he calls out a name, Hanagasaki. The young woman stands with a composed and serious expression, singled out before the class. With his decision made, the teacher slams his hands on his desk and officially makes her responsible for getting Takasuji to level 3 by Monday. She accepts the task without any argument, her eyes wide as she simply replies, "Yes, understood." Her quiet agreement sends a ripple of murmurs and whispers through the classroom as the other students react to the unexpected pairing. The news enrages Furuta Masao, who shouts in protest, questioning why a guy like Takasuji gets to be with Hanagasaki. Takasuji, meanwhile, is internally conflicted. He thinks he should be the one who's angry, as he's being forced to level up with someone else while using his own secret grinding method. Later, having changed into his gear, he stands at the entrance to a dungeon, sighing. He looks at his phone, which displays a message from Hanagasaki asking him to wait for her in the classroom after school. He lowers the device, admitting to himself that he ignored her and came straight to the dungeon. Now, however, he realizes this situation has turned into a real pain. He recoiled with a yelp, startled to find Hanagasaki Reika standing right behind him. She looked at him coolly, asking why he was running away. Stammering, he tried to explain that he just wanted to do things at his own pace. Her expression hardened as she questioned if he had a problem with her, causing him to cry out her name in surprise. She pressed on, her gaze unwavering. She told him she knew what he had been doing, hiding in the dungeon, and that there was no need to conceal it from her. He could only stare, utterly flabbergasted. The revelation struck him. He had been watched. The thought was staggering, as the hidden stats he was raising were supposed to be values that the people of this world couldn't even perceive. He quickly realized, however, that her knowledge was incomplete. She had seen the situation, but she couldn't possibly know the true reason behind his strange training methods. Seeing his conflict, she made an offer. He could keep casting Bolt on himself if he came with her, and she could at least provide the bare minimum of help for him to level up. He balked, protesting that he couldn't level up that way, and questioning if this was truly in his best interest. She then asked him directly, what was he doing all this for? He turned away, admitting that his actions were necessary, but that he couldn't prove it. With a sudden surge of conviction, he faced her, his eyes burning with intensity. He declared his one true goal to become the strongest. His declaration hung in the air. Hanagasaki's eyes widened slightly as she quietly processed the weight of his words, repeating them to herself. He met her gaze, his own unwavering as he affirmed his goal. That's right, he waits for her judgment, hoping she won't laugh at his grand declaration. Hanagasaki Reika simply stares back, her expression unreadable as she considers his words. After a moment, she crosses her arms, acknowledging that his goal is wonderful, but warning him it won't be easy. She states firmly that this isn't a game. He immediately refutes her, insisting that it is a game, which leaves her looking completely baffled. Her expression hardens with impatience. She asks if this is really the time for jokes, adding that if he continues to be so stubborn, her own reputation will suffer. Standing apart on the vast stone floor of the dungeon, he observes her, thinking to himself that she seemed to accept this job far too quickly. He decides to change tactics, reasoning that she would just run away if he tried to force her cooperation. He then proposes a different arrangement. In response, she presents a small, crystalline necklace. I'll lend you this, she offers. She explains that the necklace restores his MP. Furthermore, she will heal any HP he loses, which will save them both time. It's not a bad deal for him, she points out, as he looks on in stunned silence. He has to admit, it's a good offer. A memory of Ichiju Kazuma surfaces, complaining about the pure agony of waiting for HP to recover. This is an opportunity he couldn't have imagined. He agrees, but his suspicion grows. He asks what's in it for her, a sudden fear gripping him. Does she know about the guidebook? She lays out her terms simply. Once he's satisfied his self-harming habit, he must then help her level up properly. With the deal struck, she begins to walk away. She muses that if this goes well, she'll be free from this ordeal and her reputation will be safe. But she quickly dismisses the thought as pointless for now. With their agreement settled, Takasuji takes Hanagasaki's hand, stating his intention to borrow her necklace. He steps back into the stone corridor, channeling his power and incanting a single word, bolt. The spell erupts as a flash of lightning, causing him to grunt from the exertion. Simultaneously, Hanagasaki extends her hand, conjuring orbs of gentle, restorative light. He gasps in astonishment as he feels the effects. He realizes his HP is being restored by Hanagasaki's magic, while at the same time, his MP is rapidly refilled by the power of the necklace's ether crystal. Watching her, he comes to a new conclusion. Despite her class being that of mage, she also possesses a crest of healing. His curiosity piqued, he turns to Hanagasaki and asks if she would mind showing him her crest. She is completely flustered by the request, stammering that it's the kind of thing one asks a girlfriend to do. Despite her embarrassment, she reluctantly agrees, her hand moving to her side. As he watches with a faint blush, she lifts her uniform slightly to reveal an intricate crest on her lower abdomen. He immediately recognizes it as a complex, third-generation design, one befitting a noble. Her expression sharpens. She questions how he knows so much, stating that the crest was a secret art of a certain noble family until recently. She asks if he has ulterior motives, but he deflects, telling her to interpret it as she wishes, all while noting her confidence. She presses on, turning the interrogation back on him. She asks what kind of crest the great Takasuji, who aims to be the strongest, plans on getting. She adds that she would love to hear about it for reference. As he turns away in silence, he confidently states his intention to acquire a fourth-generation healing crest. Hanagasaki immediately corrects him, explaining that only 3 generations of such crests exist. Meanwhile, Ichiju Kazuma internally acknowledges that while she's correct by the standards of this world, his own plan to obtain such a crest remains unchanged. His declaration leaves Takasuji momentarily flustered. Seeing this, Hanagasaki's eye twitches with slight irritation. She declares that's enough talk. The rest is a secret. Understanding that he's hiding something from her, she suggests they return to their training with bolts. She then extends a hand towards him, her expression intense as she offers to help him cast the spell. Standing at a distance on the stone courtyard, he nervously declines her assistance. Hanagasaki observes that he seems to have a lot of free time and questions why he isn't focused on leveling himself up. With a confident smile, she dismisses his concern, explaining that her own level is already so high that she can't find anyone to form a party with anyway. Her statement leaves Takasuji momentarily speechless. He reflects on the interaction, realizing that while Hanagasaki had seemed unapproachable at first, she is surprisingly easy to converse with. The next 3 days, they dedicated themselves to intense training, honing their hidden skills late into the night. His magic resistance skill, which had shown minimal improvement over the first 2 days, began to increase sharply on the 3rd day of their rigorous regimen. From her perspective, the sudden surge in his ability was inexplicable. Hanagasaki likely had no idea what was truly happening. However, from Ichiju Kazuma's perspective, the logic was clear. Each successful evasion led to a gain in skill, which in turn led to more successful evasions. It was a perfect feedback loop for rapid growth. Driven by a newfound ambition, Takasuji Takashi decided to expand his training regimen. He ventured into the first floor of the dungeon, accompanied by Hanagasaki Reika, with the goal of hunting slimes to raise not only his magic resistance, but his physical resistance as well. His plan quickly materialized as they found themselves on a grid floor, surrounded by numerous dark, gelatinous slimes that emerged from pools on the ground. Takasuji squared his stance, ready for the confrontation. Before he could act, one of the creatures launched a piercing projectile, striking him hard in the chest. He cried out as the impact threw him off balance, realizing with alarm that this was far more dangerous than he had anticipated. Suddenly, a blinding torrent of energy erupted from behind them. A powerful spell cast by a mysterious woman in ornate armor obliterated the swarm of slimes in a single, overwhelming blast, leaving Takasuji stunned. As the light from the attack subsided, Hanagasaki let out a quiet sigh of relief. Takasuji, however, remained frozen, his mind reeling from the sudden, powerful intervention. He turned to his companion, his face a mask of confusion as he silently questioned what had just occurred. Hanagasaki met his gaze, her own expression a mixture of worry and resolve. Their respite was short-lived. A massive, ring-shaped projectile of slime hurtled towards them. Without hesitation, Takasuji grabbed Hanagasaki and pulled her behind him, bracing for the impact. The attack was merely a prelude. From the shadows emerged a colossal slime, its gargantuan form dwarfing everything around it as it loomed over the 2 students. They could only stare upwards, their faces etched with a shared expression of disbelief and terror at the monstrous foe that now stood before them. The massive slime monster advances on Takasuji and the female mage, who are both on the stone floor, seemingly cornered. The mage gets to her feet, turning to Takasuji with a concerned look. She tells him to get back, realizing he is intentionally trying to avoid leveling up. She steps in front of him, staff held at the ready in a defensive stance. Takasuji looks on, surprised by her protective gesture. The creature's response is immediate, launching a volley of slime projectiles toward them at high speed. The barrage, however, has an unexpected effect. The slime monster begins to weep, its body dissolving as tears stream from its many eyes, leaving the path forward into a long corridor clear. Suddenly, a bolt of energy streaks from an unseen source and strikes Takasuji squarely in the back. He is struck directly, but instead of being harmed, a faint aura envelopes him. He seems completely unfazed. He turns to the stunned mage, explaining with a grin that while the attack hit, he barely felt any pain and his skill has improved. He reveals his secret. He's been raising a hidden magic resistance stat by intentionally taking damage from magic, a feat only possible when his own magic power is low. The mage can only ask what that means, completely bewildered. His expression shifts to one of intense, almost manic confidence. He declares that he isn't just resisting the magic, he's completely negating it. This declaration leaves the mage staring at him, her face a mask of utter shock and disbelief at his reckless power-leveling strategy. He tries to downplay his revelation, but the mage is aghast, questioning who he is and declaring that his exploit is on the level of a state secret. She warns him that if anyone discovers he possesses such knowledge, they will hunt him for the rest of his life. Flustered, he insists he just happened to figure it out and begs her not to tell anyone. He reflects on his carelessness, realizing he has genuinely frightened her. Trying to make amends, he explains that she now understands what he was doing, but reassures her that it's too late for her to use such an exploit anyway. He advises that since she is a magic-based class, her spirit stat will increase naturally, and she can raise her physical resistance by fighting slimes. Internally, he resolves to be much more careful about leaking information from now on. The scene shifts to nightfall. A large school building sits under the dark sky, its windows glowing softly, illuminated by the surrounding streetlights. On a nearby street, Takasuji, now bearing fresh scrapes on his face, walks alongside Hanagasaki Reika. As they walk past the city lights, he bids her goodnight, saying he'll see her tomorrow. She quietly agrees. He stops, turning to face her. He apologizes, admitting that he made her worry and acknowledging that this was the reason she had been keeping an eye on him. Her face flushes with indignation. She retorts sharply, denying that she would ever worry about him and accusing him of getting full of himself. Announcing that he has soured her mood, she turns and storms off. She walks away without another word, leaving him standing alone on the opposite side of the crosswalk. As he stands there, he reflects that it was thanks to her worrying that he managed to hit level 3. In that moment, he also learned the common skill appraisal for the first time. A status screen materializes, confirming his new level and skill. His thoughts drift to his initial suspicions. At first, he had thought she was trying to uncover his secrets, perhaps by using a skill to see his initial unimpressive stats. He now understands her true motivation. Her constant observation wasn't an investigation. It was simply her way of worrying about a bottom feeder like him. He considered his next steps, realizing that while raising basic stats like HP and strength was simple enough, his true goal was to reach level 5. With that, he could finally achieve a class change, setting his sights on becoming a bishop. The following day at the academy, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. It was time for field training. The assignment, as he understood it, was to enter a dungeon and meet a quota for obtaining magic stones. But as the other students quickly formed their 3-person parties, he found himself completely left out, an outcast once again. He sighed, feeling that his situation was hopeless. Just then, a cheerful voice cut through his isolation, inviting him to join their group. He looked up to see a girl with rabbit ear accessories alongside the formidable Shinguji Ayano. The first girl asked Ayano for her approval, which she gave without hesitation. The cheerful girl then teased that being alone with Ayano was a bit scary, a sentiment Ayano seemed to agree with. He was taken aback, asking what was so scary about being with him, completely misinterpreting the comment. The girl quickly clarified, explaining that Ayano was known as the Ice Queen and had an intimidating aura. Ayano herself looked slightly flustered by the blunt assessment. With that settled, the cheerful girl enthusiastically declared them an official party. Takasuji could only look on in stunned silence. And so, for reasons he couldn't quite fathom, he had ended up in a party with these two. Before heading out, he took a moment to review his current condition. His status screen confirmed he was Takasuji Takashi, a level 3 apprentice. His stats had indeed grown, now to the single digits. He felt a genuine sense of happiness seeing his strength and durability increase, even if the improvement was modest. He and his new party members wasted no time, entering the dungeon immediately after forming their group. They descended through the stone corridors, quickly making their way to the expansive second floor. As they proceeded, Shinguji Ayano suddenly stopped and addressed him directly. With a cold expression, she ordered Takasuji to stay back, bluntly stating that he was weak. Her sharp words were punctuated by the sudden appearance of a hulking goblin. The other girl, however, seemed completely unfazed, cheerfully teasing Takasuji for being reprimanded, though she admitted it might be the right call. He gritted his teeth, annoyed by their assessment. It was a harsh judgment, especially considering he had just acquired a brand new weapon from the school store. With a swift motion, he drew the weapon from its sheath, a ninja blade, rank E, capable of inflicting additional damage. His cheerful companion noted it was a fine-looking weapon, but questioned if he could even use it properly. Takasuji retorted that he would master it in no time, but Shinguji cut in, declaring that she would take the front line. Before Shinguji could move, however, the other girl stepped forward, planting the butt of a massive spear on the stone floor and giving a confident win. She spun the heavy weapon with surprising ease, gathering momentum for a powerful strike. In a blur of motion, she lunged forward, aiming the spear's formidable tip directly at the snarling goblin's maw. With a single, powerful thrust, she impales the goblin through its skull. Takasuji and Shinguji can only watch, stunned by her prowess. A memory surfaces in Takasuji's mind from a strategy guide. The Shinguji family is known for running a spearmanship dojo that is popular with militant guilds. He processes this new information, realizing it's no wonder she's so strong. The guide defined militant guilds as outlaws who sometimes attack or capture other guilds. This connection means Shinguji might be far more dangerous than any ordinary noble. She turns to Takasuji with a wide, toothy grin, cheerfully announcing that goblins are no big deal. With a playful tone, she adds that it looks like there won't be a turn for him to fight. As she speaks, a new threat emerges from the darkness. A grotesque, fish-like humanoid monster leaps towards an oblivious Takasuji. Shinguji's eyes widen in alarm as she screams a warning for him to look out. Her warning comes just in time. The creature's massive claw swipes through the air where his head had just been, and he cries out in shock as he recoils. He stumbles backward, narrowly dodging the attack as the monster lands heavily on the ground. His heart pounds in his chest as he finds his footing, facing the new enemy. He steadies his breath, gripping his blade with both hands. His expression hardens as he prepares to engage the creature. With a determined cry, he swings his sword in a wide arc, aiming for the monster's torso. From the side, Shinguji watches the confrontation, her face a mask of intense focus. The creature is faster. It lashes out with its own claw, tearing into Takasuji's shoulder. He grunts in pain as blood splatters from the wound. Shinguji's eyes narrow, her teeth clenched as she witnesses the blow. Despite the searing pain, he holds his ground. His body is tense, his gaze locked on the monster, refusing to yield. He stood his ground, panting from the exertion. A realization began to form in his mind. Combat in this world was about accumulating damage through a flurry of attacks, culminating in a single, powerful strike. As he processed this new understanding, the girl with the rabbit ear accessories chided him for being weak and pushing himself too hard, while his other companions watched with worried expressions. His brief moment of reflection was shattered. Before him and his party, the path was now blocked by a silent, menacing horde of monsters. Goblins, horned brutes, and other grotesque creatures stood in a formidable crowd, their collective presence overwhelming. A cold sweat broke out on his face as the sheer, impossible number of enemies sank in. Surrounded by a horde of monsters in a wide courtyard, Takasuji Takashi panics, wondering if this is where he will die. As his companions stand ready, Hanagasaki Reika calmly closes her eyes, clutching an ornate, key-like scepter. She raises the scepter, and it crackles with immense power. In an instant, massive crystalline shards erupt from the ground around her, shooting outwards in every direction and bearing down on the terrified creatures. The crystal projectiles pierce the monsters' bodies with lethal force. They fall to the stone floor, dispatched in a single, overwhelming attack as Takasuji watches in stunned silence. The red-haired girl looks on, poised for any survivors. She leaps into action, spinning through the air to cut down the remaining few. Nearby, Ichu Kazuma also engages the enemy. The mage with them remarks with satisfaction that it was a tasty haul, adding that since there's hardly anyone else around, they can really clean up. Takasuji, however, complains that if they kill all the monsters, he won't get any practice. Reika calls him stubborn, especially for someone so weak. The red-haired girl laughs, mocking his earlier claim to become the strongest. Despite his lack of participation, the battle was a success. He reached level 5 and was able to learn a common skill from his item box. As the group walks up a grand staircase, a commanding voice shouts, "Out of the way, you small fry!" A wave of force erupts, pushing aside other students. At the top of the stairs stands a new, imposing group of individuals. His companions stop, sensing the newcomer's unpleasant aura. Reika identifies them as the Class S students, and they all agree to stay away from the arrogant group. Takasuji recognizes them for what they are, the nobles of this world. Later, after school, Takasuji goes alone to a spot near the river, not far from the academy. He arrives at a secluded waterfall basin and takes out a small, apple-like fruit he had just purchased from a store. He throws the fruit into the water as an offering. Kneeling at the edge of the basin, he offers a prayer, pleading for strength. In response, the water's surface ripples and a massive, multi-armed deity emerges, its voice echoing very well. Takasuji stares up in disbelief. The powerful being looms over him as a new status becomes clear. He has unlocked the Bishop class. It is the strongest class available at level 5, possessing high growth potential and great compatibility with both frontline and rearline roles. Having successfully completed his class change, he made his way to the research institute attached to the academy. As he approached Research Lab 301, a man with goggles and intricate tattoos on his neck and arm, turned to look at him, a curious expression on his face. The researcher's eyes lit up. He declared Takasuji's timing to be perfect, eagerly asking if he would be a test subject for a newly finished crest prototype. The aggressive offer immediately brought the phrase mad scientist to Takasuji's mind. Noting the available space on his back, the researcher pressed his case, and Takasuji, without a word, simply nodded in agreement. He soon found himself strapped face down to a bed, his back exposed. As the researcher prepared, Takasuji made a series of requests, asking if it would be possible to also add crest for fortitude I, swiftness V, exorcism 4, and summoning 2 while he was at it. The researcher scoffed at the extensive list, telling him not to demand the world for a little blank space on his back. After a moment's thought, however, he conceded that it was not a bad build. Sometime after their exchange, Takasuji lost consciousness. He awoke sometime later in the same bed inside Research Lab 301. Pushing the covers aside, he slowly sat up and then stood, looking around the room. Catching his reflection, he saw that his entire back was now covered in a vast and complex pattern of interconnected crests. A sharp intake of breath escaped him as he took in the sight. As he stared, the researcher's voice cut through his shock, announcing that he was awake. The man explained that he had provided crests that were normally impossible to obtain without meeting special conditions, and had done so for free. He confirmed what a guide had previously told Takasuji. He was indeed the inventor of the Cure No. 4 pattern. Takasuji asked who he was affiliated with. The researcher seemed unsure how to answer, prompting Takasuji to quickly invent a story about being separated from a tour group. The researcher suddenly grabbed him, his demeanor shifting to one of desperation. He begged Takasuji to promise not to tell a soul about what had transpired, especially given the sheer number of crests he had received. His expression turned menacing as he warned Takasuji not to show anyone the specific crest he had requested. Takasuji quickly agreed. The researcher's curiosity then returned, and he asked what the basis for the crest build was, remarking that it seemed plain at first. Takasuji claimed it was a spur-of-the-moment idea, which amused the researcher, who had figured an amateur would want something like Fisher magic. Inwardly, however, the researcher was deeply unsettled. He recognized that the combination of crests was not random at all. It was selected with terrifying precision from millions of possibilities, designed to handle any and all situations. He came to a startling conclusion. The build must have been devised by someone with knowledge of crests that surpassed even his own. He stood for a moment, the intricate new crest stark against his back. As the researcher walked away, he muttered to himself about the impossibility of the combination, resolving to research it further. Now dressed, Takasuji stepped outside, only to find that the sun had set and the school ground were shrouded in darkness. As he walked, a confident smile spread across his face. He now possessed a full suite of abilities. His bishop class granted him healing, while the new crest provided fortitude to boost his strength, swiftness for agility, exorcism for removing debuffs, and even summoning magic. He had everything he needed. His thoughts were cut short, however, as a sudden sense of unease washed over him, causing him to stop and look around in confusion. His unease was justified. From a square, stone-lined pit in the courtyard before him, a figure began to rise. It was a tall, humanoid creature encased in bone-like armor, its helmeted head adorned with horns and multiple glowing eyes. Frozen in place, Takasuji could only stare in horror, his mind struggling to comprehend the monstrous being that had just appeared. On the grounds of Cherry Blossom Academy, a monstrous, armored creature prowls. From behind a tree, Takasuji Takashi watches, his eyes wide with disbelief and terror as he recognizes the figure. He realizes with dawning horror that it's a shape-shifting monster from the game, one that devours students. A terrifying anomaly is occurring. The game is merging with reality, allowing characters to move freely, and this creature wasn't supposed to appear for a long time. The creature is unstoppable. He knows that at this point, not even the game's protagonist, Ichu Kazuma, could defeat it. Someone at this school is certain to die. At his current level, all he can do is stand by and watch. The thought is horrifying. His present helplessness was a stark contrast to the power he had so recently forged. In the game world, he had endured countless battles, crying out in pain as a slime monster's attack connected before he launched a powerful retaliatory kick. His kick struck true, causing the creature to recoil. With its defeat, a surge of energy coursed through him as he leveled up. His status screen appeared, displaying his name, Takasuji Takashi, and his vastly improved statistics. It was during this arduous training that Hanagasaki Reika had approached him, expressing concern and urging him to fall back from a dangerous boss. He had to reassure her that he'd handled it many times, privately annoyed that she still perceived him as weak. His newfound confidence was the result of 10 straight days of grinding, hunting 1550 slime bosses. This relentless effort finally paid off, rewarding him with a rare piece of loot, the Ancient Ring, an artifact that provided a massive boost to his health. He soon encountered another party of students. One of them, a girl with rabbit ear accessories, confronted him with disdain, suggesting he should be thanking them for not leaving him behind. She mocked him for supposedly never improving, but he met her scorn with a sly, confident grin, asking if she was truly sure about that. As if to test his claim, a massive white wolf charged. Takasuji stood his ground, and as the beast lunged to bite, he caught its powerful jaws with his bare hands, stopping its ferocious attack cold. The wolf was thrown back and destroyed, leaving the other students speechless. The girl asked if he'd gotten a new weapon. Hanagasaki, however, noted his incredible toughness and that his attack power was now on par with Ayano's. The girl scoffed, claiming he only caught up due to his weapon, but Takasuji silenced her with a final declaration. His magic was now just as powerful as hers. He internally notes the monster's durability, realizing he can't even make a dent in its HP. Nearby, Hanagasaki Reika warned Shinguji Ayano not to be reckless, reminding her that she's not a brawler who has never even broken a sweat in a proper dojo. Ayano, however, seems more concerned about him, wondering if rushing things is too much for Takasuji. He overhears, annoyed that they think the enemies on the third floor, who use magic, will be a problem for him. As they proceed, Ayano turns to him, pointing out that moving to a new floor significantly increases the risk of dying. She asks if this is his first time on the third floor, suggesting it might be too soon for him. They stand before a vast, column-lined hall marking the entrance to the new level. Upon entering the hall, they are immediately confronted by two hulking, shaman-like monsters wielding ornate staves. Without hesitation, the larger of the two beasts lunges forward, swinging its weapon in a wide, powerful arc. Ayano reacts instantly, dodging under the massive swing. With fierce determination, she vaults over the creature's head, positioning herself for a devastating downward strike. Though her attack lands, the monster retaliates, inflicting a bleeding wound on her chest. She cries out in pain as she lands, clutching the injury, while Takasuji and Reika look on in alarm. Seeing her fall back, he extends a hand. A glowing, intricate symbol, a tattoo, materializes on the back of his jacket before appearing over Ayano's wound, healing it in a flash of light. She stares in stunned, blushing disbelief as he calmly tells her not to push herself, calling her weak. Their moment is interrupted by the arrival of another group. Their leader, a student with a bandana over his eyes, declares the area the C-Class's hunting ground and orders the D-Class scrubs to leave. Ayano recognizes them as a notorious crew who are at least 5 levels higher. Reika fumes, calling it blatant harassment from tyrants. The confrontation triggers a memory for Takasuji. He recalls that during their dungeon diving classes, harassment from C-Class became rampant. Resentment simmered within his own class until, in the midst of the tension, a joint swordsmanship class for the entire grade was announced. The scene shifts to a large, traditional dojo. Within the dojo, an elderly instructor calls for the next match. Takasuji, dressed in a kendo uniform, stands ready. His opponent is announced, a C-Class student with long, light-colored hair who smirks condescendingly, muttering about having to face a bottom feeder from D-Class. The C-Class swordsman is flanked by his equally arrogant classmates. Takasuji sees through his opponent's bravado, realizing the boy plans to vent all the frustration he accumulates from bowing to the A and B classes on him. A confident smirk plays on Takasuji's lips as he anticipates the confrontation. He holds his ground, sword at the ready, as his opponent smirks from across the dojo floor. The C-Class swordsman notes aloud that while their blades may be blunted for training, the impact will still be painful. His eyes gleam with cruel intent, a promise of the suffering he intends to inflict. In response to the threat, a bead of sweat traces a path down his temple, but his face breaks into a wide, predatory grin. He internally observes his opponent's disappointment, but sees this as the perfect opportunity to gauge the true strength of a C-Class student. He has been eagerly awaiting a chance to test his own power. In the dojo, two combatants face each other, swords at the ready. On one side, a young woman with long, light hair bears a confident, almost cruel smirk. Opposite her, Takasuji Takashi's expression is one of pure focus and determination as he grips his own blade. The swordsmanship instructor, his face contorted in a fierce shout, signals the start of the match. With a guttural cry, the woman lunges forward, her body a blur of motion as she closes the distance in an instant. She brings her sword down in a powerful strike, but as Takasuji meets her blade, he feels a strange jolt of energy. He realizes with shock that she has cast a spell, a bolt. His opponent looks on, surprised by his reaction, as he recoils. The magical energy sends him staggering back. The instructor looks on in disbelief as the woman lands, her uniform singed. She furiously demands to know how he dared to use magic in what is supposed to be a sword-fighting class. From the sidelines, a student with slick-back hair watches with a smug smile. He dismisses the brewing conflict entirely, declaring that he doesn't care and ordering the match to continue. His opponent, covered in soot and sweat, looks at him in disbelief, questioning if he's serious. Takasuji stands opposite her, equally battered, as the instructor and other students watch from their seated positions, powerless to intervene. As the blonde student and his companion smirk, Takasuji understands. Giving orders and completely ignoring the teacher. They're definitely from A class. He realizes this must be their idea of a ranking ritual. The instructor remains silent, his expression grim. His opponent, enraged by the situation, decides to escalate. She declares that if magic is on the table, she will use it too, unleashing a powerful flame burst spell. The attack erupts in a massive explosion of fire, engulfing Takasugi and throwing him backward with a cry of pain. The fiery vortex swirls around him, a maelstrom of heat and destructive energy. Yet, through the inferno, his silhouette remains standing, holding his ground against the overwhelming force. Emerging from the dissipating flames, Takasugi is scorched and bruised, his uniform tattered. But his eyes burn with an unyielding intensity, his gaze fixed on his opponent, ready to continue the fight. He stands his ground as his opponent, battered and sweating, roars in fury, calling him a bastard for withstanding the previous attack. Enraged, the C-class swordsman charges, unleashing a wild flurry of strikes. Takasugi meets each blow, their blades clashing violently as his opponent screams with exertion. From the sidelines, the A-class students mock the swordsman, commenting on how pathetic it is to lose to someone from D-class. Stung by the insult, the C-class fighter snarls and channels dark energy into his blade for a swirling, powerful strike. He unleashes the magic, his sword now wreathed in a crackling, dark blaze. Takasugi recognizes it with alarm as a blaze skill. His opponent has imbued his weapon with magic. The swordsman smirks, confident in his advantage. With a manic grin, he closes the distance in an instant. Takasugi's eyes widen, shocked by the incredible speed of the magically enhanced assault. The blow connects with devastating force. Blood erupts from Takasugi's mouth as he is thrown backward, the impact releasing a shockwave that blasts through the dojo and sends other students reeling. He collapses to the wooden floor, his face bruised and bleeding, a dazed expression in his eyes as he struggles to comprehend the attack. He gasps for air, his body trembling from the impact. Suddenly, his eyes begin to glow with an intense, white light, catching the stunned attention of the swordsmanship instructor. The light intensifies, swirling around his face. As he pants, the wounds on his cheek and lip visibly mend, the skin knitting itself back together under the soft, healing glow. Witnessing this impossible recovery, the C-class swordsman's shock twists back into fury. He launches himself forward once more, determined to end the fight. He swung his blade in a wide, furious arc, but Takasugi, now healed, ducked beneath the blow with surprising agility. The sheer force of the missed strike was palpable. From his low stance, he thrust his left hand forward, palm open, as if to seize the very air before him. A torrent of dark, crackling energy erupted from his palm, enveloping his opponent completely. The swordsman's face contorted in a silent scream of shock and pain. The dark energy dissipated, leaving the swordsman charred and smoking, his body collapsing to the dojo floor. Takasugi watched, panting, the strange power still tingling in his outstretched hand. Observing the decisive outcome, one of the A-class students declared with finality that the match was over. But his opponent, despite his condition, refused to accept defeat. From the floor, he roared in defiance, insisting that it was not over yet. The A-class student calmly corrected him, stating that the loss was sealed the instant he failed to counter the unexpected magic. His words struck a nerve, and the defeated swordsman could only grit his teeth in silent fury. Takasugi watched the exchange, his expression unreadable. With the matter settled, the instructor called for the next match, ordering someone to take care of the student with a mohawk, who reacted with a look of pure, sweating dread. After the conclusion of that brutal swordsmanship class, Takasugi changed back into his uniform and made his way to his own classroom, 1D. He returned to his classroom to find the atmosphere as gloomy as a funeral, with students slumped over their desks in despair. This despair, it turned out, was an annual tradition. The students of D class were utterly crushed, many of them nursing injuries, bandaged heads, arms in slings, and faces covered in cuts. He stood amidst the defeated, realizing that the teachers seemed to turn a blind eye to the discrimination and abuse heaped upon D class. As he absorbed this grim reality, a female voice called out his name, Takasugi. He turned to see two female students. One, with bright pigtails, waved enthusiastically, exclaiming that it had been a while. The greeting left him completely bewildered, with no recognition dawning on his face. Seeing his confusion, her dark-haired companion gestured towards the cheerful girl, prompting him, asking if he remembered Amatsuka Yuko. He replied that it was the first time he'd ever heard the name, which sent Amatsuka into a state of shock. She couldn't believe he had forgotten her, insisting that they had attended middle school together. Still, he could not recall. Internally, he lamented the sudden appearance of these hidden backstories, a development that was making his heart race with anxiety. He stammered, still at a loss, as Amatsuka explained that she had been out sick until recently. She pressed him again, asking if he had truly forgotten her. He remains dismissive of the girl's familiarity. With tears in her eyes, Amatsuka Yuko calls him mean and clueless. He retorts that he doesn't need a lecture on common sense from someone with pink hair, demanding to know what's wrong with her. As he watches them, Hanagasaki Reika explains to Amatsuka that her level is low due to her absence, and that she is helping her. She tells Amatsuka to consider it repayment for a debt and to assist her in return. Takasugi internally remarks that Hanagasaki has picked up another stray, thanks to her meddlesome personality. The girl in question, Amatsuka Yuko, is a fairly popular heroine. She is a magic specialist who focuses on healing. Though optimistic and easygoing, she also has a gentle side and is always full of energy. At the start of the story, she had been absent from school for about a month due to poor health. Back in the classroom, a discussion about the discrimination against D-class was about to begin. Uninterested, Takasugi slipped out alone and headed for the dungeon. He moved with purpose through the stone halls, his mind set on a single goal: to raise his level. He made his way straight for the 7th floor of the dungeon. He arrived at his destination, a vast, ruined chamber littered with the debris of past conflicts and shattered pillars reaching toward a dark ceiling. This particular floor held unique dangers. Down here, in addition to other monsters, lurked creatures called ghosts that could only be defeated with magic. Zombies and skeletons also appeared on this level. These enemies used powerful magic, making it a floor that most people simply skip. But he knew the truth of the matter. For a bishop-class user, these undead creatures could be taken out with a single high heel. He thrust his hand forward, unleashing a brilliant blast of holy energy. The force of the positive energy was devastating, tearing the zombie's head from its shoulders and sending it hurtling through the air. He lets out a breath of relief, his hand outstretched after dispatching the last of his foes. The remnants of the undead creatures he faced dissipate into nothingness around him. Standing tall amidst the quiet aftermath, he considers the sheer efficiency of this grinding spot. Knowing this, he can't help but think that the others can have their stupid turf wars. Meanwhile, back at Cherry Blossom Academy, the day proceeds under a calm, partly cloudy sky. Inside a classroom, however, the atmosphere is anything but calm. A student with long, light-colored hair points an accusing thumb at Takasugi, loudly declaring to the others that Takasugi is the one who will drag them all down. Takasugi listens with a weary expression, internally questioning what exactly he's being dragged down from, and whether the student intends to start a war with the upper classes. The accuser continues his tirade, reminding everyone that Takasugi was the one who spoke out during the meeting about their loss to C-class, and now he's trying to pin all the blame on him. He recognizes the familiar, predictable pattern, just like a scenario from the popular NeverQuest series. If things are left to play out according to this story, a conflict is bound to happen eventually. His thoughts drift to the real threats, like the leader of A-class, a formidable opponent known to possess mystic eyes. He doubts he could even win a fight against him at his current level of 20. This realization solidifies his strategy. Instead of wasting time and resources on pointless internal conflicts, he knows he must focus entirely on leveling up right now. His quiet resolve is shattered as the long-haired student gets in his face, shouting that their class is trying not to be looked down on by the upper classes, and that Takasugi is the one holding them back. The student demands to know what he just said. Unfazed, Takasugi calmly replies that he should focus on raising his own level, as he is in no position to worry about others. Before the argument can escalate, Ichu Kazuma steps in, firmly stating that's enough. He reminds them that fighting amongst themselves will solve nothing. He stood silently amidst the tense classroom as one of the female students voiced the group's shared anxiety. The harassment from C-class, she stated with grim certainty, would never stop on its own. She argued that if they didn't fight back at least once, nothing would change. As she spoke, Takasugi internally weighed their chances. He knew the 2-year experience gap between their class and C-class would be difficult to overcome. He believed he could close that gap himself, but he couldn't let anyone know about the strategy guide he possessed. Shinguji Ayano then spoke up, her voice filled with fiery resolve. She declared her intention to aim for the top, refusing to lose to such harassment. However, another student countered her, suggesting they've already seen that just talking gets them nowhere, that keeping a low profile was the wiser course of action for now. Shinguji retorted, correctly interpreting Takasugi's unspoken sentiment, that they should all just shut up and level up. She conceded that this was probably the best solution. While the rest of the class was caught up in arguments, Takasugi had ignored them, heading to the dungeon's 7th floor to train. In just 1 month of his solitary effort, he had already reached level 20. His status screen materialized, displaying his name, formidable stats, and a list of powerful equipped skills, a testament to his secret and rapid growth. Within a vast, stone-tiled dungeon, a series of grand arches leads into the shadowy depths. Here, Ichu Kazuma stands ready, flanked by 2 new companions, a dark-haired mage with an ornate staff and a younger, light-haired girl holding a wand. Kazuma himself is now clad in a dark jacket and combat boots, hefting an enormous greatsword. He lets out a powerful roar. With all his might, he swings the impossibly large blade in a wide, horizontal arc. As the blade connects with a simple, block-like monster, the light-haired girl apologizes, feeling that this is all for her sake. Her companion reassures her, noting that Kazuma seems to be enjoying himself. He leaps towards another foe, reflecting on his recent progress. After grinding on the 7th floor, his once low stats have risen to about average, and he has successfully changed his job to Gladiator. The Gladiator class provides a significant boost to HP, strength, and agility. As an attacker class that relies on physical power, it has 0 growth in endurance and magic, making it a double-edged sword. However, its physical attack power is easier to raise, making it a strong choice for offense. Surrounded by the defeated creatures, he notes that even with a rental weapon, he was able to slice through them with ease. He acknowledges that he won't level up much on a floor like this, but it's a good place to play around. His dark-haired companion approaches, remarking that it's impressive he can handle a greatsword like that. She tells him he's gotten much better at fighting, and that his speed of growth is amazing. The light-haired girl agrees, finding it unexpected. Kazuma questions her condescending tone, but she clarifies that for someone who could barely fight just a few days ago, his current ability is a huge deal. He bristles at her words, telling her not to make it sound like he had no talent. He just struggled because his starting stats were low. She counters that starting stats are a measure of talent, but since she's complimenting him, he should just accept it. Takasugi Takashi reflects on the rapid progress of his companion, internally admitting that while one could call it talent, it's a difficult reality for him to accept. His thoughts are on Amit Tsukayuko, who has achieved an almost impossibly good result for a newcomer, reaching level 5 in just half a day's time. As the group stands together, Takashi announces that since it's getting harder to level up on their current floor, they should head for the 4th. His dark-haired companion agrees, though she voices her hope that they avoid any trouble. He confidently dismisses her concerns, stating that if C-Class tries to interfere, they can simply defeat them. He adds that he's sure Ichiju has already dealt with them anyway. His sudden bravado surprises his companions. The dark-haired mage questions the source of his confidence, while Amatsuka wonders aloud if Takasugi was always this way. The party proceeds, arriving at the 4th floor, a vast, circular chamber supported by a ring of imposing stone pillars. Upon entering, their attention is immediately drawn to a tense gathering in the distance. Takashi observes that it looks like D-Class and C-Class are in the middle of a serious confrontation. Indeed, the C-Class swordsman has a D-Class student by the collar, shouting aggressively in his face while others look on with expressions of shock and amusement. Unseen by the groups below, Ichiju Kazuma watches the entire scene unfold from a high perch atop the pillars. When one of his companions asks how he got up there, he coolly replies that the view is better for watching from that spot. His expression hardens into a menacing glare. He declares that this area is still too advanced for the lot of them, and with cold authority, orders them to scram. He stood firm, his allies arrayed behind him, and issued an ultimatum to the group blocking their path. He declared they were getting through, even if it meant using force. From a distance, Takasugi Takashi and his companion watched the tense standoff. She whispered Ichiju's name, a note of concern in her voice. The leader of the opposing faction, a young man with a sinister grin, accepted the challenge with a simple, very well. His own group stood ready behind him as the two sides faced off. Observing from his elevated position, Takasugi analyzed the combatants. He identified the C-Class leader as Kiriyama, whose level, according to the strategy guide, was 12. This meant there was a level difference of about 4 between the groups. He continued his assessment, noting that Kiriyama's group was decked out in expensive, offense-oriented equipment. Still, he reasoned that since Ichiju was this game's protagonist, he could likely make up for the difference. The question of the outcome hung in the air. Takasugi's eyes widened with focus as he wondered aloud. Who's going to win? Down on the stone floor, the standoff shattered. With a battle cry, Ichiju Kazuma surged forward, his sword raised as he led the charge. His allies followed suit, rushing to meet the opposing C-Class students who charged with a unified shout of their own. Ichiju closed the distance in an instant. His body coiled as he prepared to unleash the first strike of the battle. His blade flashed, connecting with a C-Class student in a brilliant burst of energy. From above, Takasugi watched, his mouth agape in shock at the sudden, overwhelming display of power. He watched as the clash of steel rang out, Ichiju Kazuma's blade grinding against Kiriyama's weapon in a shower of sparks. Despite the force of the blow, Kiriyama emerged completely unscathed, a contemptuous smirk spreading across his face. He taunted his opponent, asking if that was all the strength he possessed. From his vantage point, Takasugi Takashi understood the grim reality of the situation. Given the rarity of Ichiju's weapon, he had no hope of breaking through Kiriyama's formidable defense. His thoughts were interrupted as another student stepped forward, blocking the path. The youth issued a clear threat. If anyone dared to help Ichiju, they would be beaten down as well. They were to stand there quietly and watch. He knew the student was right. A healing spell from the sidelines would only annoy Kiriyama. But he also knew that if a D-Class like Ichiju was intimidated into submission, he had no chance of winning. Deciding on a course of action, Takasugi subtly extended his hand. In that instant, a shimmering aura enveloped Ichiju Kazuma. The potent energies of enhance and haste magic surged through his body, bolstering his power and speed. The sudden buff caught Kiriyama completely off guard. He spun around, his face a mask of fury and confusion, demanding to know who had cast the spell. Even Ichiju looked startled by the unexpected aid. He, however, feigned total ignorance. As his companions glanced at him with suspicion, Takasugi simply looked away, whistling a carefree tune. His beneficiary, though unaware of the source, accepted the gift. Thanking his unknown ally, Ichiju squared his shoulders and announced his readiness to fight. His challenge was immediately met. One of Kiriyama's companions, a mage with long, flowing hair, stepped forward with his wand as Ichiju lunged into the fray. He charges forward, undeterred by the massive fireball hurtling towards him. The spell, cast by the hooded mage, illuminates the battlefield as his two companions watch from a safe distance. The caster of the spell, a hooded young man, watches with a confident smirk, certain his attack will find its mark as the fireball streaks across the stone courtyard. But his opponent is far from helpless. With his sword held high and shield at the ready, Ichiju Kazuma prepares to meet the fiery onslaught head-on. He leaps into the air, swinging his blade in a powerful arc that cleaves the fireball in two, dispersing the flames around him as he closes in on the mage. The mage's confident smirk vanishes, replaced by a look of disbelief. Kazuma's eyes, however, burn with fierce determination. In a desperate counter, the mage roars and unleashes a far more devastating attack, a colossal wave of dark, concussive force that erupts outward, engulfing not only Kazuma, but his allies as well. The blast slams into the two female mages, sending them flying as they cry out in agony. From their vantage point, Takasuji and his companions can only watch in horror as the two young women lie motionless on the scorched flagstones, smoke rising from their bodies. The hooded mage stands over the apparent victory, but amidst the smoke, Ichiju Kazuma, battered and bruised, pushes himself back to his feet, his sword still clutched in his hand. Seeing his opponent rise, the mage fires off several rapid energy bolts. Kazuma deftly dodges each one, using the opportunity to close the distance and leap in for a strike, calling his opponent a fool. He charged directly into the enemy's attack. In response, the C-class mage unleashed a powerful spell of Flare Burst that erupted into a massive ball of fire, seemingly engulfing Kazuma completely. Despite the danger, Kazuma's expression remained one of pure, unwavering focus as he plunged forward. The fiery blast dissipated, revealing that Kazuma had somehow passed straight through the spell's epicenter. The C-class mage could only stare in utter disbelief, his mouth agape as he cried out in shock. He couldn't comprehend how anyone could have survived such a direct assault. Before the mage could react, Kazuma was upon him, bringing his sword down in a swift, decisive arc. The blow landed squarely, eliciting a cry of pain from the caster. Watching from a distance, Takasuji Takashi's eyes widened in astonishment at the brutal and sudden conclusion of the fight. With a final decisive motion, Ichiju Kazuma swings his leg in a powerful arc, his kick connecting squarely with Furuta Masao, sending the C-class bully flying backward. The defeated student crashes to the stone floor as Ichiju lands. A wave of celebration erupts from the watching students. Takasuji and his companions look on as the crowd cheers their victory. Amidst the cheers, a defeated C-class mage sits stunned on the ground. Takasuji turns to his friends, suggesting they should also move on. The young woman with the ribbon in her hair agrees, remarking that beating C-class is still an impressive feat. His group begins to walk away, passing between the large stone columns. As they proceed, an angry voice shouts out from behind them, demanding they stop. The voice belongs to the wavy-haired A-class student, who is now being supported by his Mohawk teammate. His face is bruised, and his expression is furious as he accuses them of trying to walk away after contributing nothing to the fight. He screams at them not to mess with him, insisting that his group were the ones who put their bodies on the line. Takasuji coolly replies that he talks as if he actually did something. Internally, Takasuji assesses that the fight would have been much easier if this particular student had been more mobile. He continues his thought, realizing it would be a problem if he himself didn't level up. He then speaks aloud, reminding the other student that he was the one who just said they needed to raise the whole class's level. With a sharp gesture, Takasuji issues a challenge. If the A-class student wants to pull the same stunt as their defeated enemies, he is more than welcome to take him on. The direct confrontation leaves his accuser speechless with shock. The Mohawked student quickly intervenes, holding his furious teammate back and telling him to stop. He stares at Takasuji, realizing with a grim expression that he's gotten a lot stronger. Takasuji remains silent, his expression unreadable. With the confrontation settled, Takasuji and his companions proceed, emerging onto a vast, open-air stone causeway. They have arrived on the 4th floor. He stands on the 4th floor, flanked by two female mages. The one with the high ponytail expresses her doubt, asking if it is truly all right for just the three of them to be here. He confidently tells her it's fine because he is with them, but his other companion, Reika, questions if their situation is impossible. He turns to Reika, annoyed, asking why she won't believe his words but would believe some poker-face girl. Hearing his confidence, the other mage decides that if Takashi says it's fine, then it must be. Reika reluctantly agrees. Her stoic expression shatters. A vein throbs on her forehead as she internally fumes at being called poker-faced, her anger momentarily twisting her features into a menacing scowl. Suddenly, the other mage turns on Takasuji, reminding him that his reputation isn't exactly great. She declares loudly that everyone used to say he was so useless he couldn't even manage to beat a slime. She points an accusing finger, calling him a failure. Takasuji retorts, reminding her that he was the one who protected her from a slime boss. He emphasizes that this was back when he was only level 1, shouting that his past weakness is irrelevant now. Their argument fades as they arrive at a vast, fortified settlement within the dungeon, a sprawling town square bustling with other explorers. The trio walks through the streets, observing the high stone walls adorned with banners bearing the familiar crest of their academy. Takasuji looks around in amazement, spotting an inn, a shop, and even vending machines. He exclaims that it feels just like they've wandered into a real town. It is explained that such safe zones, popular with explorers for leveling up, have developed into town-like hubs. However, The group bypassed this sanctuary, heading directly for the main area of the 4th floor. Their choice leads them immediately into danger. Before them stands a hulking, horned beast wielding a crystalline club, flanked by 2 smaller, vicious-looking lizard creatures with bladed tails. As the trio faced their monstrous opponents, the dark-haired mage, Reika, was the first to act. With a sharp cry, she thrust her hand forward, unleashing a powerful blast of force directly at the rhino-like beast and its smaller lizard companions. Her spell, a concentrated vortex of energy, slammed into the dungeon wall with tremendous force, carving a deep crater into the stone and sending dust and debris flying. Caught in the blast, the monsters were violently thrown back, their bodies contorting from the sheer impact of the magical assault. As the dust began to settle, Takasuji complained that his vision was blocked, making it difficult to fight. Reika, her expression one of intense focus, simply shouted back for him to deal with it. He needed no further encouragement. Leaping through the swirling dust, he became a blur of motion, his blade flashing as he sliced through the stunned lizard monsters with 2 swift, decisive strikes. His attack was brutally efficient. The monsters fell, their bodies bisected, leaving him standing amidst the carnage, his sword ready for the next threat. With the monsters defeated, a wave of light washed over his companions, signifying that they had leveled up. Takasuji suggested they should head back to the inn soon, but Reika, seeing how much experience they were gaining, wanted to press on. She turned to him, asking what his level was now. He replied that it was still their first day and there was no need to rush. Reika, however, was determined, stating she absolutely wanted to reach level 10 during this session and had just hit level 9. She then turned her gaze on him, demanding to know his level and questioning his silence. Her frustration mounted. She accused him of making her reveal everything while he kept his own secrets, exclaiming that it was always like this. She then angrily declared that it wasn't as if she was interested anyway, before accusing him of hiding away in the mountains, practicing his swordsmanship instead of training in the dungeon like everyone else. The other mage, cheerful and oblivious to the tension, announced that it was only her first day and she was already level 6, though she admitted it was getting harder. Takasuji, meanwhile, kept his level a secret, thinking to himself that it would be a problem if they tried to copy his methods and died. The reason for his rapid progress was simple. He had been grinding on the 7th floor. He and his companions arrive at a stone courtyard. Takasuji points towards a large staircase, identifying it as the entrance to the 5th floor. His companion, Reika, turns to him and suggests they investigate. The staircase before them is immense, stretching upwards into the gloom. Massive, gnarled tree roots snake across the ancient stone walls, and a low, ominous rumbling echoes from the top. Deciding to proceed, the trio begins their ascent up the long, daunting flight of stairs, dwarfed by the colossal roots flanking their path. They reach the summit and step into a vast, open chamber. The entire area is a tangled mess of the same thick, ancient roots, creating an uneven and treacherous landscape. Suddenly, a strange noise cuts through the silence. All 3 adventurers snap to attention, their eyes widening in unison with surprise and alarm. Before them stand 2 colossal monsters. One is a ferocious, saber-toothed feline, growling with menace. The other is a long, reptilian beast with multiple eyes and spiny protrusions, letting out a shriek. The reptilian creature roars, its maw gaping as its strange, compound-like eyes fixate on its target. The sight renders the 3 students speechless, their faces contorted in pure, unadulterated terror. Ignoring the humans entirely, the reptilian monster whips its body around, slamming its tail into the ground near the saber-toothed beast, initiating a battle between the 2 titans. As the saber-toothed monster roars and lunges forward, Takasuji draws his blade. He shouts a desperate warning to his companions. Get down. He met the massive lion monster's charge head-on, his sword clashing against its immense fangs. Despite the creature's overwhelming size, he held his ground, a lone figure standing between the beast and his companions. His companions could only watch in stunned silence, their faces etched with disbelief and concern as he single-handedly parried the behemoth. As they watched, the other combatant, the long-bodied lizard monster, unleashed a torrent of dark, crackling energy from its maw. The blast engulfed him completely, shielding the 2 mages with his own body. His eyes flared with a defiant light as he withstood the full force of the magical assault. He stood firm amidst the dissipating smoke as one of the mages, Reika, cried out his name. He quickly assessed the situation, realizing the lizard's magic attacks were potent. It was only his high magic resistance that saved him. He knew he could likely force his way through alone, but if the monsters targeted the 2 behind him, their lives would be in grave danger. With this realization, he made his choice. Turning to his companions, he yelled for them to follow and pointed the way forward, taking the lead through the chaotic battlefield. He led the way at a full sprint. The lizard monster, seeing its target now moving, gathered its power and launched another blast of dark energy directly at the fleeing students. But as the attack closed in, the massive lion monster leaped through the air, intercepting the blast meant for Takasuji and his party. His path cleared by the intervention, Takasuji seized the opportunity, turning his blade back towards the lizard monster. From a distance, the 2 mages watched the maelstrom of combat. Reika's expression was one of tense awe, while her companion covered her mouth, utterly stunned by the incredible display of power. His face smeared with grime and sweat. Takasuji grits his teeth, looking down at the defeated monster. He realizes with grim certainty that this place is too much for them to handle right now. With this decision made, the group retreated to the 4th floor, where they spent another 2 hours leveling up. Exhausted, they then sought refuge for the night at a local inn. Inside, they approached the front desk, where the innkeeper informed them that he had a room available, but only one. The innkeeper's words hung in the air, causing both Reika and her companion to flush with embarrassment. Takasuji, equally taken aback, began to sweat as he slowly processed the implication of their situation. Inside the inn, the proprietor addresses the 3 weary travelers, informing them that he has a single room available if they need one. The 3 travelers turn from the counter, the 2 mages looking toward Takasuji as they consider the offer. He hesitates, his face still showing the grime of battle. Reika enthusiastically accepts the room for her and her companion, but Takasuji declines, stating that he will just take a tent outside. True to his word, he settles into a simple tent within a small encampment, using the quiet time to read a book by lamplight. He analyzes his own abilities, realizing his main problem is that even at level 20, his agility is so low that enemies just run circles around him. He has more than enough attack power and endurance, but he concludes he must either level up more as a gladiator or go to town for better items. Lying back in his sleeping bag, he continues to read the guide, noting with frustration that Master Tony's book seems to insist that agility is an unnecessary skill. The contradiction is a puzzle he can't seem to solve. Unable to figure out the author's intentions, he lets out a deep yawn as exhaustion finally catches up to him. He succumbs to sleep, resting soundly inside his tent. The next morning, Reika confronts him, pointing out a stain on his clothes in the same spot as yesterday, and asking if he's done any laundry. He retorts that, unlike nobles, his tent didn't even come with drinking water. With a huff, she tells him to do his best, remarking that his desperation for experience attracts a lot of weirdos. Her companion quietly wonders if she is included in that category. He looks at her intently, his expression turning serious. He asks if she is truly committed to leveling up, then brings up the duty that nobles like her are supposed to have. He listened as Reika considered his question, her gaze averted. She admitted it was a difficult topic, explaining that her family's expectations were low because her older brother was exceptionally talented. She elaborated on her family's plans. They intended for her brother to inherit the grand family estate, while she was seen as nothing more than a pawn to be used in a political marriage. The younger mage beside them gasped, remarking on the harshness of the situation. As Takasuji remained silent, Reika added that if she didn't inherit the estate, she would be cut off from her noble duties, and that the only thing truly expected of her was to achieve good grades. She then revealed her true goal. For her brother's sake, her father had purchased something from a wealthy American tycoon, the unlock conditions for a certain class. Fulfilling those conditions to change her class was now her primary objective. The information the Hanagasaki family had acquired concerned the legendary Arkwizard class, a powerful and esoteric path. The requirements were incredibly specific and difficult. She would need to max out the mage class, raise the thief class to level 5, change to the enchanter class, and finally, defeat a dragonkin single-handedly. This final task was a monumental challenge. Lesser dragons only began to appear on the 20th floor of the dungeon, and the highest floor ever reached in Japan was the 28th. It was a perilous undertaking even for the ace members of top guilds. With a determined look, Reika stated that reaching such high floors was necessary to maintain a noble's reputation, tying her personal ambition to the duties she sought to redefine. In an instant, their conversation was shattered. A winged, reptilian monster dove from above, its bladed tail slashing downwards. Takasuji reacted immediately, leaping forward to intercept the attack. His sword met the creature's tail with a sharp clang, stopping the blow. He glanced back at the 2 stunned mages and offered a casual greeting, unfazed by the sudden ambush. His effortless defense left Reika stunned. She voiced her confusion, stating that she had heard swordsmen and warriors lacked defensive capabilities, yet he seemed to defy that rule. Without even a shield, his performance was so exceptional that she demanded to know what kind of cheat ability he was using. Her suspicion was echoed by Amitsuka, who exclaimed that she had also been thinking something was strange. She found it unbelievable that Takasuji, widely known as a failure, was perfectly fine in a dungeon floor that none of their other classmates could even hope to reach. She pointed out that he was defeating nearly every monster by himself, which was just plain weird. Takasuji, looking slightly pressured, stammered that even kobolds were a struggle for him, but his excuse was unconvincing. Her tirade continued with dizzying intensity. She shouted that it wasn't just about defeating them in a single blow. He didn't even need healing after taking damage. She demanded to know how it was possible for him to be so proficient in both offense and defense. He simply closed his eyes, a weary but determined look on his face, and reminded them of what he had said before. He was going to become the strongest. His declaration left both Amitsuka and Reika momentarily speechless, processing his unwavering resolve. He then elaborated, admitting there was no way to bluff his way out of it. He confessed that he couldn't hold back any more than he already was, as his high level put his stats in a completely different league from theirs. In the end, their day of dungeon crawling proved fruitful. Amitsuka reached level 7, and Takasuji's own gladiator class leveled up to 3. Hanagasaki was also in high spirits from her own progress. Their day of adventuring concluded, and the next morning arrived. He was immediately confronted with an unbelievable sight. A calm voice wished him a good morning, remarking that he seemed to have slept well. Takasuji could only stare, his face a mask of pure shock. Within the stone walls of a city, Reika stands in a new, revealing outfit, holding her ornate staff. An unseen person questions her attire with disbelief, asking what in the world she is wearing. She turns to face Takasuji, who is standing a short distance away. Confused by his outburst, she asks what he is talking about, while he stammers, trying to find the right words. His gaze drifts downward, lingering on her high-heeled shoes and the straps adorning her legs. A sudden exclamation escapes her as she realizes where his attention is fixed. Her face flushes a deep red with embarrassment. Flustered, she confronts him directly, demanding to know where he is looking and loudly accusing him of being a pervert. As she stands there mortified, her companion, another young mage, observes that the outfit is indeed a little too bold. Takasuji, meanwhile, breaks into a nervous sweat, realizing he had stared without thinking. She quickly defends her choice, insisting it's not what it looks like. She explains that the outfit is based on the leader of the Rangers Guild, as she is planning on trying out the thief class. He remains unconvinced, remarking that she is the type to get caught up in appearances. He concedes that the Rangers are a mid-tier guild, but bluntly states that no matter who she is copying, the result is awful. Outraged by his criticism, she demands to know what he means, accusing him of just wanting to get home quickly. She then urges everyone to get on with the leveling they came to do. With the matter settled, the party moves forward through the city's stone corridors. Reika leads the way with a determined look, followed closely by her fellow mage, Takasuji, and the rest of their companions. Her new attire immediately drew the stares of several nearby men, their faces flushing as they pointed and gawked at her. The source of their fascination was, as Takasuji discovered, a paid, download-only content pack. He stared at the case for beachside Hanagasaki Reika, noting with disbelief that the shocking outfit cost 4,000 yen. To anyone unaware of the context, he thought, she simply looked unhinged. His thoughts were interrupted when Reika turned to face him, her expression clearly annoyed. She demanded to know why he was making her walk ahead of the group, all by herself. He gritted his teeth, muttering that he was just pretending not to know her. From ahead, Reika shouted back in frustration, arguing that even if she was in the vanguard, he, as the tank, should be the one taking the hits. Her face contorted in disbelief at his dismissive attitude. The argument was cut short by a piercing screech. A small, insect-like monster lunged through the air directly at Reika. She spun around instantly, her demeanor shifting from indignant to focused as she raised her staff to meet the threat. Its claws struck an unseen barrier, shattering against the magical defense protecting her. The sudden, effortless block left Takasuji and his other companion momentarily stunned. With the creature reeling from the impact, a confident smile spread across Reika's face as she declared herself ready. As she engaged the monsters in the distance, the other mage noticed Takasuji's strange behavior and asked what was wrong. He averted his gaze, sweat beading on his brow, admitting internally that her movements were so distracting he couldn't concentrate. His frustration boiled over, and he shouted at her, demanding to know how he could possibly not be distracted by that. Flustered and blushing, Reika spun around and yelled back, calling him a pervert and ordering him to focus on the battle. She stood her ground, her voice filled with genuine disappointment. She confessed that after his impressive actions the day before, she had started to believe he was different from the other boys. Now, she accused him of being despicable, of hiding ulterior motives all along. She continues her tirade, calling him a pervert who is good at hiding his wicked thoughts. Then, her tone shifts slightly, and she admits she's actually a little relieved, concluding that he's just a normal boy after all. Takasuji remains silent while their companion looks on, amused. The argument is punctuated by the swift dispatch of a small, bat-winged monster, sliced cleanly in two as it charges them. Amidst the ongoing battle, he shouts over to Reika, telling her to let him know when her thief class hits level 5 so they can head back. His casual instruction causes their other companion to freeze, her eyes wide with shock. A moment of silence passes before Takasuji, confused by her reaction, asks what he just said. Reika's expression shifts instantly from anger to sharp suspicion. She turns to him, her eyes narrowed, and demands to know how he knew her class was specifically level 5. He breaks into a cold sweat, realizing his blunder. Information about the Arkwizard class is highly classified, protected by magical non-disclosure agreements. Reika presses her advantage, stating coldly that he knows far too much. Takasuji is stunned into silence. She stares him down, her expression unreadable but intensely scrutinized. Their companion, sensing the tension, asks Reika if Takasuji said something mean again. He quickly tries to cover his tracks, laughing nervously and claiming he just picked 5 because it seemed like a nice, round number. Reika, however, sees right through him, noting that it's unnatural for him to be so nervous. As he continues to sweat, she leans in close, a sly, knowing smile on her face. She whispers a promise not to tell anyone, her tone making it clear she now holds a powerful secret over his head. Under the bright morning sun, Takashi stretches his arms high above the city rooftops. He reflects that it's been a while since he's seen the sun. Though a sense of unease lingers, a brief memory of a smiling girl gives him a moment of peace. He resolves to pull himself together and heads into town, walking down a paved street lined with shops. His destination is a local beef bowl restaurant, a simple, modern building standing under the clear sky. Inside, he enthusiastically eats his meal, seated next to an elderly man. For a moment, he seems completely at ease, savoring the food. After his meal, he walks through a bustling street, passing under a grand archway that reads, "Welcome to the City of Dungeons." His eyes fix on something ahead, his expression shifting to one of focused curiosity. He sees Shinguji Ayano standing outside a building named Guild Noir. She scoffs with disdain. He realizes this must be the guild office of the famous Ichu in Kyuko before continuing on his way. Walking alone, he contemplates a problem. He tried to gather items according to his guide, but they weren't in their specified locations. He wonders if the scenario was rewritten because he interfered with Ichiju's confrontation. This thought leads to a chilling possibility, visualized by a sinister, multi-eyed masked figure. He questions if this is a side effect of an NPC starting to move around on its own. He finds himself sitting on the ground in a sprawling, crowded marketplace filled with adventurers and strange merchants, including one with a checkered, spherical head. The reality of this new world settles in around him. He examines his recent acquisitions from the black market: a dagger, likely a keepsake from someone deceased, and an ornate, safe-like box. He discovers that the dagger is not just a weapon, but the key to the box. With a click, he realizes it would be impossible to figure this out without prior knowledge from a guide. Inside, he finds an amulet of power, a rare item that boosts strength by 20 points. He knows that selling it would provide enough wealth to live comfortably for the rest of his life. After removing the necklace, he decides to sell the now-empty box and the dagger. He takes the amulet to a local appraiser, a stout man with a thick mustache who peers at it through a loupe. Takasuji proposes a trade: the amulet of power for an amulet of agility. The appraiser points out that the amulet of power is far more valuable. Unfazed, Takasuji counters, asking him to include a scapegoat ring in the trade as well. The shopkeeper is flabbergasted, explaining that the ring only prevents stun damage, and only once. Despite his surprise at the seemingly poor trade, he agrees. Seeing Takasuji's certainty, he even offers to throw in a mana potion. With a simple "thank you," Takasuji finalizes the deal, having turned a 50-coin dagger and a 1,200 coin safe into items worth roughly 20,000. With his new item secured, he turns his attention to the next task: a treasure hunt. He recalls a location he scouted earlier, a place situated behind the Guild Noir building. He arrives at the grounds, which once belonged to another guild. There, a small, unassuming shrine is said to house the legendary phantom katana. He recalls the game's logic. The roof of the shrine is meant to open, revealing the katana inside. He murmurs an apology before preparing to act. Suddenly, a voice asks if he has a moment. Startled, he turns to find Hanagasaki standing there. He recoils in surprise, demanding to know what she is doing here and telling her not to sneak up on it. He is immediately put on the defensive as Hanagasaki Reika confronts him. She notes his flustered expression, remarking that he looks like he was about to do something he shouldn't. She issues a stark warning: trespassers on this guild's property do not leave alive. Takasuji quickly insists it's a misunderstanding and that he wasn't planning on entering. Despite his outward calm, a bead of sweat forms on his face. Internally, his mind races with urgency. He must hurry and complete his task before the members of Guild Noir return from their expedition. His train of thought is broken when Hanagasaki shyly admits she has a favor to ask. She suggests they go to a cafe to talk, but he curtly dismisses the idea, telling her to just say what she needs to right here. She gets straight to the point, her expression earnest. She asks him directly if there's a shortcut to unlock a certain powerful class, and if so, she wants him to tell her how. He explains that the fastest way to acquire the witch class is to change to it and maximize its level, a process that grants significant boosts to MP, magic, and spirit. However, he warns that the requirements are not something one simply stumbles upon. The class is unlocked through a specific ritual, as snakes are considered servants of demons, requiring a union with the snake statue at the shrine. Hanagasaki is taken aback, asking if he is making fun of her. With a straight face, he tells her it's the only advice he can offer. He promises to compensate her for her trouble and urges her to just go to the shrine, straddle the snake statue, and try it. With the conversation concluded, he watches her walk away towards the shrine, a bewildered look on his face. She seems to be taking his bizarre instructions seriously. His interruption dealt with, he turns his attention back to the small shrine building. He locates a hidden compartment and slides open a wooden drawer. Inside, resting on the wood, is the object of his quest, the phantom katana. He draws the blade. As he holds the katana aloft, a swirling, ghostly energy begins to emanate from the dark steel, confirming its legendary power. He now possessed the kotetsu, a legendary blade. Under normal circumstances, the only way to acquire such a weapon was to first join the notorious Guild Noir. He drew the katana from its scabbard with a swift, smooth motion, the steel whispering as it met the air. But as the blade cleared its sheath, his senses screamed. His eyes darted to the side, suddenly alert to an unseen presence. His instincts were correct. From behind a nearby wall, a cloaked figure watched him from the shadows near the shrine's torii gate. He realized with a start that someone was there, and they were closing in. Without hesitation, he burst into motion, vaulting over a low wall to make his escape. He landed atop a tiled roof, but his pursuer was already rounding the corner, undeterred. Rather than continue fleeing, he changed tactics, launching himself directly from the rooftop toward the masked figure, who could only watch in stunned silence. The maneuver bought him a precious few seconds. He landed in a narrow alleyway, catching his breath as he scanned his surroundings. Peeking from his hiding spot, he finally understood. The one standing guard wasn't just any sentry. It was a rogue, one equipped with a presence detection skill. He found the recent chase draining. No longer feeling like exploring the city, he decided to take a break and check on Hanagasaki, heading towards the local shrine. Upon reaching the top of the long stone staircase, he stopped short, his mouth agape in surprise at the sight before him. There, atop a large pedestal, Hanagasaki Reika was wrapped around a massive stone serpent, clinging to it with a strange, desperate intensity. He could only stare, a bead of sweat trickling down his face as he tried to process the bizarre scene. Stepping closer with the kotetsu now in hand, his confusion was written plainly on his face. Her eyes snapped open, and upon seeing him, she immediately cried out, accusing him of tricking her. He grimaced, denying it with a strained expression. She continued, lecturing him that instead of being so quick to doubt people, he should try being a little more trusting. His expression remained stony. Ignoring her words, he suddenly grabbed her leg and gave it a sharp tug, trying to dislodge her from the statue. She shrieked in protest, telling him to stop. He ordered her to stop struggling, but she retorted, calling him crazy and warning him of the danger. Realizing that simply pulling wouldn't be enough to break whatever condition she was in, he sighed and decided he would have to give her a proper hand. As he reached around to lift her, his hands made contact with her backside, causing her to let out a sharp, surprised cry. His own eyes widened in shock at the accidental contact. He stammers an apology, his face beet red as he admits he caught a glimpse of something he shouldn't have. Still fused to the stone snake, Hanagasaki lets out a cry of shock and humiliation. Her face burns with embarrassment, her eyes wide with disbelief at the mortifying situation. Overwhelmed, she declares that she's had enough and is leaving. In a fit of pure frustration, she thumps her head against the unyielding statue as Takasuji watches from a distance. He calls out to her, urging her not to give up after just one try. He explains that once she unlocks the witch class and raises it to level 10, she will be able to unlock the Arkwizard class. His words seem to register. Her initial anger fades, replaced by a thoughtful expression. With a determined huff, she turns away from him, her long hair swirling as she resolves to follow his instructions. He is left standing alone, a bead of sweat on his temple, completely baffled by her sudden change in demeanor. Later, back in the familiar setting of his classroom at Cherry Blossom Academy, he sits at his desk, the strange encounter still weighing on his mind. His thoughts are interrupted when a female classmate leans close, whispering excitedly into his ear that it worked. He follows her gaze to see Hanagasaki standing freely nearby, and his eyes widen in astonishment. She catches his eye and smiles, confirming that his advice had indeed worked perfectly. The silhouette of a powerful mage materializes behind her, a testament to her newfound abilities. The classmate whispers to him again, relaying Hanagasaki's desire to thank him and probing if there is anything he might want as a reward. Flustered, he can only manage a simple acknowledgement that he's glad it was successful. Inside the classroom, Hanagasaki Reika approaches Takasuji Takashi, catching him off guard by offering him a thank you gift. In a flash of light, she materializes her offering, a beautiful, winged staff that glitters with power. The item is an angel's staff, a weapon of A-rank rarity. He stares at the weapon, his face a mask of shock as he recognizes its immense value. He immediately tries to refuse, stating that he doesn't need a gift. Reika remains firm, explaining that her father purchased it for her upon hearing of her potential. She insists that, as a noble, her honor demands she give him something in return for his help, urging him to take it. He pauses, then makes a counteroffer. If she's truly set on repaying him, he will accept a spectre summoning contract, or, alternatively, 22 spectre coins. She looks utterly bewildered by his strange and specific request, sweat beading on her face as she processes the outrageous demand. She taps on a handheld device, her expression hardening. She explains that the coins are a rare drop on the 7th floor and none are for sale in town. She's managed to gather 77 so far, but to fulfill his request, she would need another 23. Without missing a beat, she holds up the device, displaying a transaction complete message for 23 spectre coins. She calmly states they cost about 100 yen each, and that she supposes she owes him that much. He is stunned by her swift action, marveling at his luck and wondering how he would have ever acquired the rest on his own. As Reika asks what he needs them for, he deflects, calling a secret. Internally, he thinks about the other way to get the contract, by exchanging 100 coins, a goal now within his grasp. He made his way to the dungeon's 7th floor, a place of jagged rock and deep shadows. He proceeded into a vast, stone chamber, at the far end of which stood a grand, hidden altar. Approaching the altar, he carefully poured the spectre coins into the ceremonial bowl, their metallic clatter echoing in the silence. With all 100 coins from Hanagasaki now resting in the container, he stood back, his purpose clear. A moment later, the coins dissolved into a plume of black smoke, swirling upwards from the bowl. When the smoke dissipated, a single contract lay in the bowl. Eager to test his new acquisition, he immediately wrote his name upon the parchment. The contract ignited, and from the resulting smoke, a colossal figure materialized before him. A towering, skeletal spectre draped in a tattered, dark cloak. He looked upon the creature with a satisfied grin, identifying it as a spectre skeleton. But before he could issue a command, the spectre let out a silent cry and shot away from him, moving with startling speed. He watched in disbelief, shouting after it. He recalled that specters are known to be highly aggressive and difficult to control, and this one had already vanished into the darkness, searching for an enemy on its own. He stood alone in the desolate dungeon courtyard, the link to his summoned skeleton suddenly snapping. It must have been defeated. He contemplated the nature of his ability. Spectre summoning, he recalled, carried a rare 256 chance of an unexpected outcome. That rare chance manifested before him as a monstrous ghost, a swirling mass of dark energy, multiple eyes, and a cavernous mouth, which burst forth from the summoning circle. The spectral creature immediately engaged a nearby lizard monster. A jet of flame from the lizard passed harmlessly through the ghost's incorporeal form. On this fourth floor, where physical attacks dominate, the ghost was an invincible summon. Its immunity proven, the ghost lunged forward and devoured the smaller monster in a single, crushing bite. Realizing the potential, Takasugi turned and walked away, confident that as long as his magic points endured, his new summon would automatically accumulate experience for him. The result of this automated hunting was a massive pile of gleaming magic stones, gathered and brought to his shop for appraisal. He explained to Hanagasaki Reika that he had sold off a wholesaler's quantity of the stones. Despite the impressive volume, he admitted, the total sum he received wasn't particularly large. Her expression filled with a hint of concern as he finished his story. He recalled returning to the dorms after their conversation, eating a late dinner, and collapsing in a bed, falling asleep before he even knew it. The next day, at the school's swordsmanship dojo, a new challenge awaited. Inside, he found himself in a heated argument with Saito. The other swordsman furiously accused him of imitation, yelling for him to stop. Takasugi shot back, denying the claim and insisting he possessed the ability from the very beginning. His opponent for the swordsmanship class was, as usual, Saito. Takasugi observed the intricate demon-breaking crest now emblazoned on Saito's arm, identical to his own. He surmised that Saito, realizing his flame magic was ineffective, had resorted to acquiring the same power. He watched, perplexed, as his rival, Saito, was about to begin a sparring match not with him, but with another student wielding a massive, demonic-looking blade. Before the match could start, however, a young woman with long, dark hair stepped forward, placing her hands over the demon-breaking crest on Saito's arm. A faint glow emanated from her palms as she seemed to inspect or influence the mark. He stared at the girl, a sense of familiarity washing over him. He was certain he had seen her somewhere before. His thoughts were interrupted as he watched the scene unfold. The girl stood calmly before Saito, her hands still outstretched, much to Takasugi's surprise. After her mysterious intervention, she turned away from Saito and began walking directly toward Takasugi, crossing the training grounds. She stopped in front of him, her expression earnest. She began, excuse me for the blunt question. He remained silent as she continued, asking why he was paired up with Saito. She clarified that her question wasn't a slight against Saito's strength. Her gaze was intent as she suggested that it would be more appropriate for him to pair with stronger opponents, like Kondo or Sarazawa. Her words finally triggered his memory. Ah, he exclaimed, pointing in sudden recognition. I knew I'd seen her face somewhere. The girl from the shop. The young woman bowed her head slightly, apologizing for her delayed introduction. She straightened up, asking him to be less informal now that they were outside of her workplace. With a polite smile, she formally introduced herself. My name is Sion Jirin. She stood before him, her uniform bearing the distinct emblem of A-class. Takasugi observed her quietly, finding her soft-spoken demeanor surprising for someone of her rank. He conceded her point about the magic stones revealing the floor he'd been on, but countered that it was impossible to know how strong someone is just from what they sell. Her memory, however, was sharp. She reminded him of their encounter at the shop, pointing out that he had accepted the payment for his items and put it away without even bothering to count it. She continued her analysis, adding that when she considered his monster-slaying speed, she could form a clear picture of his true strength. Her conclusion was direct. He must have been working on that floor entirely by himself. Her words struck him with unnerving accuracy. He was stunned, wondering how she could possibly deduce the floor he was on just by looking at the magic stones. The realization was stark. She knew far too much. A faint, knowing smile touched her lips. She mused internally that while she would expect such scrutiny from the specialists at the lab, it was surprising to be so thoroughly analyzed by an ordinary student. He tried to throw her off the trail, suggesting the magic stones could have been bought in town just for show, adding that there would be no need to show off for someone like him, who wouldn't even meet her eyes. She dismissed his attempt easily. She explained that despite her appearance, she was very knowledgeable about items. Her father had always told her to cultivate an eye for people, as she planned to take over his business and run an item shop in the future. Takasugi could only acknowledge that it was a possibility, but her intuition told her more. She looked at him intently, stating that she couldn't help but feel there was something more to him. Before he could respond, a voice cut through the air. The swordsmanship instructor called out to them, announcing that the match was about to begin. As Sionji turned, Takasugi was left reeling. If she could deduce so much from the size of the magic stones alone, he wondered how he could possibly throw her off his scent now. He is suddenly questioned by Hanagasaki Reika in the school hallway about the girl he was just speaking with. Looking flustered, he insists they aren't close and that it was their first time talking, wondering about her sudden interrogation. His expression shifts to a smirk as he teasingly asks if she is jealous. He advises her to try speaking with a little more charm and a little less bloodlust. The taunt strikes a nerve. Hanagasaki's face flushes a deep red, her eyes widening with a manic fury as she trembles with rage. She stammers back at him, shouting and questioning why he would ever think she was jealous and what he could possibly be talking about. He presses on, asking why she cares if she isn't jealous. Hanagasaki explodes, declaring that if her future underling is about to be tricked by some strange girl, it is her duty to intervene. She accuses him of misunderstanding and getting ahead of himself. Her tirade culminates in a furious, screamed threat. Kill you. Takasugi recoils, sweating and unnerved by the sheer intensity of her rage. Their argument is interrupted by a condescending voice. A blonde student with curly hair approaches, arms crossed, and smugly asks Hanagasaki if she is teaching this fool his place in society. As the newcomer stands with an air of superiority, Hanagasaki internally reflects on her. She notes that this blonde girl isn't from a particularly great house, but is a nasty piece of work with a superiority complex bigger than anyone's. Turning back to Takasugi, Hanagasaki sighs and agrees with the blonde's assessment of the situation, though her tone suggests a different meaning. She admits that dealing with such people is, indeed, quite a struggle. The blonde girl completely misinterprets her words. She steps forward, pointing an accusatory finger at Takasugi and warning him not to get familiar with Lady Hanagasaki. She declares that a bottom feeder has no right to speak to her, and that they could have taught him his place if only Hanagasaki had asked. He gripped the hilt of his sword, his thumb resting on the guard. He reflected that perhaps because he grew up in a country without a rigid class system, the blonde girl's entitled attitude struck a raw nerve. His expression hardened into a menacing glare directed at the girl. He warned her to choose her next words with extreme care, thinking to himself that once his blade was drawn, her precious social status wouldn't protect her from bleeding. Both she and Hanagasaki stared back, their faces pale with shock. Before she could respond, another male student with long, light-colored hair stepped forward, pointing an accusatory finger. He demanded to know if Takasugi was causing trouble again. Takasugi's face fell into shadow, his eyes glowing ominously as he raised a hand to halt the newcomer. His eyes widened with pure, undiluted fury. His intense gaze locked onto the student who had dared to intervene. In a sudden, violent motion, he shoved the intervening student, sending him flying backward through the air. The student cried out as he crashed onto the hallway floor. Hanagasaki and her follower watched, stunned into silence by the abrupt escalation. The commotion attracted the attention of a group further down the hall. Ichu Kazuma, flanked by two other students, called out Takasugi. With a serious expression, he asked if he could have a word.